What's happening? Benton here on I-75 headed north about 40 miles south of Atlanta. I was multitasking earlier. That's why the stream title may be less creative than normal, perhaps. Although shout out to In a Thought Experiment, aka Yurt, the content creator, formerly known as In a Yurtwood Book, Mr. Austin. He said something about some of these live streams. You know, it may seem like there's a topic for the live stream, but then, you know, some of the time the host doesn't actually get around to whatever the topic in the title of the video is. I felt like some of that may be directed at me, which is some of that's fair, right? Now, me personally, I try to have a topic or a theme or something I've been marinating on that morning, before I go live. It's almost like a fallback, like something I, am able to discuss if nothing else comes up, right? But if it's a night where there's been 3 live streams in a row and some of the players are still awake and have been up all night, and then I go live, and then now those people are coming to my show, my panel, then, probably not. I'm not the type to say, okay, EBT's here, he's intoxicated, but the theme tonight, EBT, is this kind of ethereal, of abstract concept that I've had going through my brain for the last 3 hours, and I'm not even totally sure what I mean by it. But if you'll just sit there patiently while I, chop it up with myself for 45 minutes, I'm sure we will flesh it out, right? And I don't mean to say this to make fun of Yurt, and perhaps he wasn't referring to me anyway. Part of my overly critical nature is that gets directed at me, and then part of these, thank God I'm not an actual narcissist, but part of having certain personality traits is, on some level, it feels like, I'm the one that's being directed at, whether I am or not. This traffic is already super annoying, and I got to say this, I'm just over the truck driving. If I could just do it my way, then, that would be completely different. But having to adapt to what the trucking industry requires of me, I'm over it, man. It's and part of that is because, my mind is set up for effectiveness in the real world. In order to do long haul truck driving the way I'm doing it, there's just lots of inefficiencies involved in the scheduling and the way the industry operates, that it's so, and by the way, this is why big companies will take over. This company, I think, is around 150 trucks. There will be no 150, I'm sure with some exceptions, there's always exceptions to everything, but 20 years from now, there will effectively be 0 companies of this size, because whatever this economic form is, we can call it capitalism. It will become more efficient over time, or I should say less inefficient. And part of that is part of that, getting rid of those inefficiencies will also get rid of companies of this size, which cannot ever operate as efficiently as a large company. It's just not possible. Schneider National, the company I started with, they have plenty of money to, invent their own IT and computer management systems. So, like, I have this dispatcher that manually schedules my loads. But by the time I stopped working for Schneider, they had algorithms scheduling the loads, completely eliminating many of those positions. And hilariously, the algorithm's going to be better than the human in some ways, because what I'm going through yesterday and today and all weekend, to some extent, it was created by a holiday, number one, which the computers won't care about holidays. Number two, it was a human being who wanted to go home at a certain time because, oh, it's Friday and it's a holiday weekend. You know, it's just so ridiculous to be in this modern age. But then, you know, uh, you ask somebody how they're doing. Well, it's Monday, and their spirits are low. Thank God it's Friday. Like, I mean, come on, man. It's just no way to live. Unfortunately, the traffic, there's really no traffic, but human beings now create traffic where none should exist. So I think I've been driving about 15 to 20 minutes now, and I've just been negotiating traffic, air quotes, traffic the entire time. But there's no reason for me to be doing that other than people are just out of their fucking minds. I mean, the speed limit's 70. I'm governed at 71, and I've basically been passing for 15 minutes. Like, that should not even be a thing. But as we know, this person in front of me is looking at their screen, giggling at their feed. That's their whole life, an entire life based around maximizing the amount of time spent looking at that screen every day. That's so on some level, why wouldn't the machines take over? I hope AI is real on some level. Like, let's get these bozo humans out of the equation to the greatest extent possible. I don't believe that across the board, but I think there is some element of that. And shout out to the chat. And unfortunately, because of bozo humans, I can't actually interact with you right now. Maybe after I get to the other side of Atlanta in like an hour and a half, maybe I'll be able to interact with you folks then, possibly. Or I can just go 65 and, kind of in some way screw up my whole day, right? Because these people aren't intelligent enough to realize what's going on around them because they're looking at TikTok videos. But meanwhile, be safe. And we have to pretend like people give a flying fuck about safety. And the same people who pretend to be outraged at somebody driving drunk, all of those people drive down the road watching TikTok videos, texting, distracted driving, which is, I would say, if I'm intoxicated but I'm not on my phone, I'll put my driving skill up against somebody who's on their phone. Like, let's set up a course, and I'll bet money that I'll do better than them. Of course, I can't drink to find out, but just hypothetically, right? And then yesterday, I would have preferred, in a vacuum to drive another hour and a half. It would have made my day better today, but that hour and a half could have turned into 3 hours because it was going into rush hour Atlanta traffic, some of the worst traffic in the country. And at the end of my day, when I might be getting tired, right? So again, when the computers are in charge, the computer will not be sending this truck, into those conditions, right? And then the fact that, because of the holiday, I had to sit around because of the holiday and where my load was sent, and because the dispatcher, in order to take the weekend off, had to give me a load that would, take me all the way through the holiday weekend. So that they chose to pick a load sending me to a part of the country where it's difficult to get a load out of there. But then the human being is like, well, we'll just worry about that Tuesday morning, right? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So then I deliver, they unload me in like 20 minutes, but then I just sit in the truck for like 2 hours doing live stream while a human being tries to find me a load, right? And then that 2 hours is what ended up sending me into rush hour traffic, more or less, because human beings need to, for some reason, go home at a certain time on a Friday. But I'm doing a job that's more or less 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're 365 days a year. So that's already doesn't mix, because now I'm interacting with human beings who they have an 8 to 5 mentality or 7 to 4 mentality. And on some level, they can never relate to my mentality. Just saying to a truck driver, well, thank God it's Friday. But it's like, you realize Friday means nothing to me, right? That has no meaning. for me. But how come when I hear the person say, thank God it's Friday, and they work in an office, I know what they mean? And this is where empathy comes in, and, all of these things where most people are just unable to, put themselves in the shoes of the other person. It's not that they're narcissistic necessarily. It's not that they're self-centered, although that's part of it. They're just not able to do that. The ability to, and I'm being passed by a rig from my same company, by the way. The ability to do that, to see something from somebody else's perspective, right? But for some reason, I'm able to do that. Now, is that a skill I developed? I'm not really sure. Possibly. So hopefully I can save up this money as quick as possible and just get the fuck out of this, man. I'm just over it. Shout out to 10 folks for the first time I get to look at the screen. Apologies for the crankiness, but I think that'll even itself out as I drink a little more coffee. What's up, Roy? Good to see you. What you mean breaks from your job, Roy? Or you mean when I'm on break? Yeah, exactly. Music holds a secret. Yeah, lots. It's just the fact that, and who knows, but according to the official fiction, with China's growth and China building out all this infrastructure, if that's really what's happening, of course it's going to be way more efficient than what we're doing over here in the U.S. Like this is it's laughable on some level, like what we have going on as a so-called country here. Like it's just it's appallingly bad in many ways. And there's another part where whatever my hypervigilance is, and I'm detail oriented, and I tend to notice these inefficiencies. If I do mention them, if I do notice an inefficiency and mention it to somebody else, they're just like, more or less like, hey, well, yeah, that's just how it is. Moving on with life. And I'm kind of like, well, but it doesn't have to be this way, which is neither here nor there for some reason, which I also find quite bizarre. And it's I have to slow way down because somebody just noticed that that's a state trooper entering the interstate, and they're not willing to be in front of the state trooper, as if that fucking matters. Like the state trooper's probably just on his way to work, right? Or has to go into the fucking substation or whatever it is. He's on his way to headquarters. Probably has an important meeting or some training or something. But, yeah. But, oh, God forbid, It's bizarre, man. Totally fucking bizarre. To be a human being, we can call it being awake. You can just call it, some level of awareness. And by the way, when we talk about like meditation and, I push back on some of these so-called truthers where I'm like, look, you're not a Zen, not you, but, none of us are Zen Buddhists. But then sometimes, there's an attitude where as a human being, I should just be able to rise above it all. Well, let's just assume I'm working on that, and I've been working towards that for 10 to 15 years. It's almost like to accomplish that becomes more difficult because the more aware I am of what's actually happening here, that there's more potential things to annoy me that where in the past I just blindly accepted those things or was not aware of them. So it's just kind of like an increasing, you know, strength of schedule or difficulty, whatever you want to call that. The difficulty is ever increasing as the being's conscious awareness increases. It also seems to increase this ability to just exist in the realm, to be in the moment. Not that I'm any Eckhart Tolle or Tolle fan, however you say that guy's name, but that's a psyop, right? It's got to be. But And then I think I've crossed the threshold of misery. It's a term from gambling when, so many painful events have occurred to where the person, I can no longer become more miserable. So it's like I look down and I'm probably look down at the speedometer, and because I'm heavy loaded and I'm going, uh, downhill, I look down and I'm on the verge of going 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, which, that's the big no-no. If speeding 15 plus, that's a big fucking deal on the old permanent record. Just being like, yeah, but I don't even care at this point. Yeah, who cares? Oh, that's right. I must have exceeded the threshold of misery. And that's why I'm going to be able to successfully play poker, folks. It's because while I can't say I've mastered all of these things around gambling and emotions and all of this, I have so much experience where, like, I've heard Brian O'Shea talking about going on tilt. Well, I don't go on tilt, not from poker. I might go on, like, what we call life tilt. And tilt is basically where, like, you lose a big pot in poker, and then they call it steaming, where the player is mad, and then they begin to play based on their angry emotions versus, making the proper decision. I just have so much experience that I don't get involved in that. It's just like I can very easily just laugh it off, because the fact is, a poker player, I'm expected to lose big pots. Like, that's just part of it. It's not possible to play poker, consistently for a lot of time every month and not win and not lose big pots. It's not a thing that can happen. It's like, why would I then allow myself to become emotionally upset as a result, or just be upset and then be aware of it and say, well, okay, now I need to take a 30-minute break, step away from the table, and sort of compose myself. Now I'm passing my same company driver that passed me. I guess he's not willing to speed like I am. The speed limit's dropped. Although we're at the interchange now, he might be taking the interchange. I don't know. Hard to say. Hard to say, folks. Now he's not going to let me pass him. You got to love that. Like, yeah, why did he go? Why was he going so slow if he's not going to let me pass him? I don't understand. I don't understand people. Although maybe he thought I was his buddy or something. He wanted to see who I am, possibly. I don't know. Strange. Very strange. Very strange. Very strange. Very strange. Shout out to 11 folks in the house at this early hour. Good to see everybody. Unfortunately, we're in Atlanta traffic now, which they do have an early rush hour. So I'm actually beating rush hour, but this is like early. This is all the other folks who decide to try to beat the rush hour. So we're still going to hit some traffic. Well, we're in the traffic now, I would say. Yeah, I highly doubt he'll play the main event, Roy. We're talking about O'Shea now. Although you never know, but there's like, I don't know, 60 different tournaments or something at the World Series of Poker. It's actually a series of tournaments. So I don't know what the lower. I'm pretty sure they have them starting at like $1,000. They might have lower ones than that even. I know one year I was wanting to go just to say I'd played in a tournament. I was looking at playing like a $1,500 tournament at one point. Although I ended up not doing that. And then it also kind of, not that I expect anybody to know anything about poker, but Austin Murphy asked when I said I was I'm trying to save up 20 grand to play poker. And he's like, just immediately thinks Vegas. Vegas actually, other than the World Series of Poker, Vegas, not that great for poker. You're actually way better. LA, from what I understand, is way better. Although I've never played any poker in Los Angeles. I'm pretty sure even like, although there's way less games, like Dallas would probably be better. Like Vegas is just not known for having, especially at the lower limits. Not the place, man. And there's basically, there's casinos all across the country now. So I can remember when I first got into gambling, it was Vegas, Tunica. So like for legal, regulated gambling in America, it was Vegas, then Atlantic City, then Tunica. And at a certain point, that was basically it, for full-on casino gambling. And then I know Kansas City came online, and then over time there got to be more and more places in the country with gambling, right? And now it's just everywhere, more or less all over the place. Like Oklahoma's got a lot of poker rooms. Tunica's a good spot. And as my game is becoming more popular, Pot Limit Omaha, the more of these inexperienced players that start to play it in card rooms, that's even better for me. Because as they're learning how to play, they're going to make a lot of mistakes and give Benton a lot of money. But yeah, it's conceivable that O'Shea could get staked into the main event. $10,000 buy-in, main event. Conceivable. There's enough rich people where somebody could just be like, hey, might as well put this guy in for $10K, and it's just basically like being an angel investor at that point. Take up a large portion of the win. We're O'Shea to win a large amount of money. More or less like a $10,000 lottery ticket, I would say at that level for the investor. Yeah, that's right. Rest in peace, Doyle. Good to see you, Murphy. Didn't mean to pick on you there, but which is also something I've noticed is how just the general public more and more just can't shut the fuck up. I've noticed they're just not able to stifle themselves, man, to borrow an expression from Adam Carolla. So there's this guy, Nick Airball. I was watching these, there's a big poker $1 million buy-in game. So the live stream was still going when I woke up this morning, and there was this really big pot. Tom Dwan won like a $3.2 million pot. Now I got people bright lighting me, so Lord only knows. Oh, no, okay, good. They're not bright lighting me. Sometimes people want to try to tell me something. They think I don't know, maybe something's wrong with the trailer, but no, they were actually doing that to somebody. Oh, they're probably just drunk, actually, based on how they're driving. So Tom Dwan is like this gigantic star in the poker world, and he's the only gigantic, like, star, famous person at the table, right? And at a certain point, he becomes talkative because he is somewhat reserved. So he's just talking, and at one point, he's actually talking about playing Pot Limit Omaha with Doyle Brunson. And Tom's relating it to this $3.2 million pot. But there's this loudmouth bozo, Nick Airball, who just can't shut the fuck up, who's laughing and joking and being gregarious and outgoing, which is completely great, because that's great when, you know, you have a poker live stream and most of the players don't have a personality and they're reserved, and you need a guy like that around. But why can't that person also know, hey, this is Tom Dwan. The audience wants to hear what he has to say, and Doyle Brunson just died, and Tom Dwan, the most famous player in the game, just won literally the biggest pot in televised poker history, and now he's juxtaposing that pot with his own personal experience playing a big pot with Doyle Brunson, who is probably the most famous poker player of all time, who just died like 2 weeks ago. But Nick Airball doesn't know to shut the fuck up in that moment. And I think this is a symptom of a greater problem where it's just how people are now. Now, some of it is, I think they're on stimulants. You know, people are just on Adderall at a base level, I think, and then some of them are doing actual meth. You know, some of them, if they're wealthy and they're gambling, they're probably doing cocaine also. You know, then they're whatever psych meds they're on. You know, it's an epidemic, man. You know, and I notice it just more and more and more that people generally are just becoming more this way. And I definitely see it on these panels where it's like, yeah, that's great if somebody is kind of a motor mouth and doesn't know when to shut the fuck up. Generally, like that can be okay. You know, the confusing part is, why don't they realize when something so important is happening, and why aren't they interested? Like, why does Nick Airball want to hear the Doyle Brunson, Tom Dwan story on the heels of literally the largest pot in televised poker history? Like, why doesn't he want? Why is his need to express himself? Why does that outweigh in the moment, right? Because he's a poker fan on some level too. It's just, I find all of this to be absolutely fascinating, as some bozo blocks me in for no reason. And I don't live here, and I don't necessarily know that I'm in the correct lane. Very bizarre. And he's like not even, like there's no reason for him to have been doing that. Almost like he's intentionally blocking me in. Oh, I see. This is one of those deals where, okay, it's either if I go that way, I'm okay, but I'm not fucked. I think. No, I might have just missed my exit. Hard to say, man. Hard to say. No, we're good. We're good. So when I talked about, when I talked about that, the load I delivered in Jacksonville, you know, I did miss I missed my fucking exit. That's great. Yeah, awesome. Well, and that's where the GPS and the road don't agree with each other. Yeah, like what the GPS is telling me and what the road looks like are not the same thing. Wonderful. Gotta love that. And in fact, I can't even legally do what I'm like. I have to get the fuck out of this. And the computer has no idea what to do. Like now the GPS is just completely fucking flummoxed. It doesn't know what to do. It's lost. So now I don't even know like where to go. All right, well, we'll just see where this goes. I hate just randomly taking fucking roads, but I don't know what else to do. And like also, why, how can other people not realize, oh, this is a truck that, based on the way it's driving, probably doesn't know where to go? As like there's literally like 50 people behind me that could have just passed me, no problem. Like they all could have just put their foot down and went around me. And that's also like people are now way more cautious than they used to be, I would say. It's just, that's stay safe, stay safe. That's the default mode now, is like, let's be cautious. Let's err on the side of caution no matter what. Glad I pay money for this software that has no idea where to go. All right, I think I can figure this out based on what I'm looking at. I think I can. Let's see. Gotta love truck driving. I mean, it couldn't be any more clear, folks. I have no fucking idea where I'm going. So there's 3 lanes. Feel free to just, in your car, that no matter what I do can absolutely outrun what I'm doing. Feel free, folks, to go around. All right. North. And the GPS still has no idea what to do. Oh, okay. Is it finally going to figure it out? No, no idea. We're just going to go this way and see what happens. Yeah, this is bizarre. I've never seen the GPS do this, where it hasn't given me a route this entire time. It should have rerouted by now. Finally, just now gave me a new route. I don't think I lost that much. I think all I lost was the time. The mileage did not go up any. So sometimes one little mistake adds 20 miles to the journey. Yeah. Although, is it trying to send me through Atlanta? I'm not supposed to go through Atlanta. Okay, yeah, I see what we're doing. Fun, fun, fun. Bear with me, folks, if you would, please. Fucking man. Gotta love truck driving. Damn, if I fuck around too much longer, I am going to end up in rush hour Atlanta traffic. Well, and you know, one thing about driving also that really shows the mentality of the general public is that almost everybody, instead of like living their own life and cutting their own path in the world, almost everybody just they do everything they do. If I'm on the road, their driving is based on however I'm driving, right? So if it's a multi-lane road and there's really no traffic yet, you know, if they were cutting their own path through life and going their own way and they were their own leader, they would just recognize, oh, slow truck, open lane, let's go around and continue on with our lives. But they don't do that most of the time. Most of the time they try to drive with me and go my speed. And now I'm looking at them going, oh, I guess we're both driving an 18 wheeler because I'm only going this speed and I'm only, you know, driving in the manner that I am because of the vehicle's driving dynamic. It's not, I'm not choosing to do this. So very bizarre, very bizarre. And I don't feel like it used to be that way. I feel like years ago, people were a little more independent and, you know, were more individuals that way, where they were just, everybody knew, oh, slow truck, open lane, go around. That was just a given, right? And in fact, if a person wanted to be looked at as a strange person, or, you know, people kind of be like, what's that guy doing? That would be the person who didn't just blast around the slow truck. Be like, what's that guy doing? He just, look at him. He's just driving the same speed as that slow truck. How strange, you know? Versus now, it's like completely flipped around. Yeah, it's a good. I'm gonna end up adding about 30 minutes to my day. Now that's if we still manage to get out without hitting traffic. Now, if this 30 minutes makes us hit a traffic jam, this could actually, one missed turn could be, you know, worst case scenario, like an hour and a half, like literally add an hour and a half to my workday. And oh, by the way, add this to the many reasons why just very few people would be willing to do this job for a living. It's, most people, there's just so many things like this that are more or less unavoidable. Like a human's gonna make an error at some point. It's not, you know, the idea that I'm just never gonna make a wrong turn. It's not really, you know, realistic. Well, I think we're finally back on the road. Although now I have to see if I may just be right back to where I missed the turn, and then I may have to make double sure I don't miss the turn. I think we're now on the proper road. No, we gotta. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I see where we're at now. Good deal. Well, that was fun. Welcome to truck driving. And I don't blame half the audience for leaving, by the way. I've noticed that people are not, when I'm annoyed by the driving, people aren't really here for that. I've noticed. So thanks to the few that are sticking it out. $5 o'clock. Yeah, we might be able to get out of here before the traffic descends upon us. What's the right time zone, Music Holds the Secret? I'm on Eastern time. You know, people can talk about, you know, which is funny with a lot of the fake news and the mainstream narratives about, you know, the southern border and, you know, all the migrants coming in. The reality is a lot of these jobs that, you know, may very well be automated out of existence in the future, potentially. You know, Americans are not going to be doing these jobs. Americans are not willing to do these jobs now. Even a job like mine, people are not going into truck driving that are like born and raised in America. It's just not a thing. You know, there's a certain subset of the population that sees the opportunity, you know, that it matches up with their personality and they're willing to put up with the bullshit. And it's, you know, for me, I can't make this amount of money doing any other job based on my skills, you know. But, you know, the reality is there's a reason why people, you know, do this job who just came to the country and don't really speak the language. Like you know, part of that is to keep the wages down, of course. But then again, you know, if the wages were double, I think I would probably just work half as much versus working the same amount and making twice as much money. It does turn into an equation at that level, and it is a hamster wheel. You know, the industry and the so-called economy wants me to work as much as humanly possible until the machine can take over, and then the machine won't have to worry about hours of service and such. But maybe we're back to normal now. We'll see. Maybe I'm. Well, that's not exactly true. Music Holds the Secret. I think that was on the last job. Now I was on Central Time when I wasn't working, but with the last company, I was out west a lot. But when I wasn't out west, I was almost always on Central Time. They hardly ever sent me to Eastern Time. But I think with this company, I'm going to be on Eastern Time quite a bit, based on what I'm seeing. a decent amount of the time anyway. And probably no west. So it'll be either central or eastern, I'm assuming. Yeah, the company's located in on Central Time. Well, in fact, the pickup and the delivery are both on Eastern Time. I'm looking down, yeah, I'm delivering on Eastern Time also. Jeffersonville, Indiana, which I guess is basically Louisville, Kentucky. Looking at the GPS, or the map rather. Yeah, there you go. That's what I thought. I thought you were Eastern Time. So, you know, people can and that's where the Trump stuff comes in. You know, Trump and all that rhetoric around migration. But the reality is, this country could not run without that migration. America, the way America runs today, is dependent on migration. And that's just a fact. The country cannot operate without migration, without a steady stream of immigrants. That's just reality, regardless of what anybody feels about it. You know, the borders are not going to be closed. You know, you could say build that wall till you're blue in the face. That's not a thing that, even if they build a wall, there's still going to be an uninterrupted stream of migrants coming into the country. It's reality. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Arizona, I don't know how it is now, but I know there was a time in which I believe there were like certain counties, and I think like Arizona doesn't have daylight savings time, if I remember correctly. And then, but I believe some of the border counties do observe it. And then you got like Texas, where none of Texas is on mountain time, except like El Paso apparently was always on mountain time historically. And then Texas made it a state law and said, "Hey, we're going on Central Time." And Texas was and El Paso was like, "No, we're going to stay on Mountain Time. Fuck you." Which kind of it does become an interesting thing as far as the state can say, "Well, you will go on to Central Time," and then El Paso was just like, "Well, actually, no, we're not." And then you see who ends up winning that battle. You can't really make it. Yeah, when I'm able to, Gary. Although I probably would have stayed up a little earlier than normal, but yeah, I went to sleep about 7:30, I think. But then with the time zone change, I actually went to sleep at the normal time on Central. So I was on Eastern. But yeah, with truck driving, there will be times when I just won't have any choice. But I don't know. I'm not long for this job, I don't think. We'll see. And Arizona also refused to recognize Martin Luther King Day for a long time. And that's how, Public Enemy had that song, "By the Time I Get to Arizona." That's what that's about. Because the feds were trying to force Arizona to recognize the holiday. All right, here's another interchange. Let's see if we can manage to take the correct route now. And part of missing that turn was the sign for the exit and where the GPS was trying to tell me to go. The GPS is giving me the name of a road, That's different than the name of the road on the sign, right? And then the line drawn on the actual line I'm looking at on the GPS makes it look like I'm not supposed to exit yet. But it's just usually, I don't know, I think that might have been the first time I've ever missed an exit in Atlanta, though, actually. So I'll take half the blame for that one. I'll give half the blame to the GPS. I'll take the other half. All right, I think we're good now. I don't think we can screw up any longer. So I think we're all right. Oh, speed limit's 60. Let's see if we can get a ticket. Better slow down there, Bubba. Oh no, it's 65. Okay. This has those variable speed limit signs. Yeah. Variable speed limit sign. Well, no, sometimes it's entirely the GPS's fault. Like when there's road construction and the road gets redesigned, but then the GPS just shows the picture of how the roads used to be. Sometimes they change the exit numbers and the GPS doesn't change. No, sometimes it's 100% the GPS's fault, but then sometimes my human intelligence recognizes, oh, something's wrong here, and I figure it out, and I still go the right way. Yeah. No, I'll take whatever blame is mine, but that was like half and half. And actually, we're making good time. The GPS says I'm going to make it to the delivery about 12:30 Eastern. So, oh, here's another hilarious part. While I'm complaining about truck driving, oh, and this is what I tried to say. This is, I think, what I was talking about right when I missed the exit. Was that so? They added an extra day to my last load because of the holiday. Well, guess what ended up happening to the load I'm running now? Well, they subtracted a day because normally this load I would have gotten loaded Monday, right? So they just kept the delivery time the same. So when the dispatcher gave me the load, the delivery was supposed to be 9:30 today. So when I punched all the info into the GPS, and the GPS estimates the drive time, and it tells me like, okay, if you just start driving now and you don't stop driving, this is what time you will arrive. So then I have to take a 10-hour break. So I added 10 hours to the time it's telling me it's going to take to drive the load, and that was already past the 9:30 a.m. delivery time. And that's not even accounting for 30-minute breaks, potentially running into traffic jams. That's not accounting for 5 o'clock Atlanta traffic. That's not accounting for having to stop for fuel. That's not accounting for maybe having to stop at a weigh station, maybe even getting inspected. And it's kind of on the driver, like to recognize that, to tell the because I'm not rolling out. I'm not headed towards the pickup until I need the dispatcher to let me know that I'm not expected to make that delivery, at 9:30 a.m., which is physically fucking impossible, right? Oh, because human beings, based on nothing other than stupid ass tradition, as far as I'm concerned, need to observe a holiday, right? Oh, but there's a reason why the load is scheduled as a 2-day load. Let's just take a whole day out of it. And so normally there's 3 days. You pick up on a Monday, you deliver it on a Wednesday. Oh, well, Monday's a holiday. The guy can't get loaded Monday. So let's just have him get loaded Tuesday, but we'll keep the same delivery day and time. Like what? That's just insane to me. I don't understand it. It's completely illogical as far as I'm concerned. But like that's the world we live in. But then I'm just supposed to be a Zen Buddhist and I'm just above it all. Like no, I don't think that's the way it's supposed to work. I would say the fact that I'm more or less pre-annoyed, that I think I'm doing pretty fucking well to deal with things as well as I am, right? I'm going to go ahead and toot my own horn. And did not really lose my shit when I made that mistake back there. Oh, and I spilled my fucking coffee. I knocked the pour over for the first time ever. And because I have these cat-like reflexes, like when I drop something, I almost always catch it. But it's part of that is those reflexes can be a double-edged sword. It's possible to actually make it worse. And my reflexes, unfortunately, made it even worse than it otherwise would have been. I just basically threw wet coffee grounds all over the inside of the sleeper hilariously. And some of which went all over my otherwise clean pants. Gotta love that. Well, no, it's not dispatchers. See, that's the thing, Gary. It's not anybody doing anything other than being a human being because, like, this is just life. It's industry wide. That I'm not the only one who experienced that. That's just okay. There's a holiday, so Benton can't deliver until Tuesday, so we just add a day to the load. Okay, well, there was a holiday. Nobody's there to load the truck on Monday. So we just subtract a day from the load versus, you think everything, logic would say, and this is why I say there's no such thing as common sense, because common sense would say, okay, well, we'll just shift everything forward a day. Well, no, in order to get back on the normal schedule, the extra day is gone, which there doesn't really need to be a full extra 24 hours, right? It's fascinating to me, but again, it's based on a human being saying, well, I want to go home Friday and I'm not going to work this weekend and Monday's a holiday, so I'm taking a 3-day weekend. So, let's get Benton a load that carries him all the way to Tuesday. And we know we're sending him somewhere. It's going to be hard for him to get a load out of there, but we'll worry about that Tuesday morning, right? Like my personality's not set up for that because I wouldn't even be able to enjoy myself because all weekend long I would be thinking about when I go back to work Tuesday morning, I have this driver that I need to get him a load as soon as possible, right? So I would probably even be looking over the weekend, but not because I'm a good person, because just that's how my hypervigilance operates. Part of me is not going to be able to just forget. But I know I'm different in that regard. I understand I'm a bit unique. And ultimately, look, let's face the reality. All that person really cares about is, being viewed as someone who does a good job, not actually doing a good job. And then, what they want to do is go home at the end of the day. Like that's the motive. And I remember when I worked in an office, I had a whole life of working in offices and working in cubicles. And that the sole motivation is let's go home at the end of the day. So I can go to my comfortable environs. And, my thing was I wanted to go home and play with my computers because I was big into computers for my hobby. That was my thing. What do I have to get through today so that I can go home and play with my computers? So whatever the version is of that for that person, like that's their motivation, is to be able to continue to pay for their comfortable lifestyle and go home and, enjoy their luxury for 2 to 3 hours. Because ultimately, when you look at like what amount of time is involved in, whatever little bit of shopping, or, what are the, what needs to be done after work on the way home. What level of rush hour traffic does the person have to withstand, living in a major city or in the greater Chicago area. I understand, again, I'm a lay expert in human psychology. This is, people have a very sophisticated mechanism for coming across as if they really give a fuck. And, they're really like, we care about our drivers and blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, that's fine. But ultimately, the person wants to go home. And especially on a holiday weekend, they want to go home even earlier than normal. It's like, hey, let's get the fuck out of here and, go off to pretend fantasy land for an extra day. That whole culture of like living for the weekend, which is misery in and of itself, as far as I'm concerned. Like, no thanks. And, as much as it's not fun living out of a backpack, traveling all around the country for years on end, part of that is very enjoyable in that, I'm avoiding a lot of the things, the trappings of modern existence that are not that enjoyable. And I always hated that idea. Like, I was always very aware of this concept of living for the weekend. And, it's just not the way to live, man, in my view. Like, it's something I always knew deep down was something that I thought Doug Stanhope, verbalized very astutely. He said, he was making fun of the audience at one point. He said, you guys worked 5 days to get 2. You're suckers, like this, you don't have to live this way. And he's right. Like, and really, I was, who actually even works 5 days a week, by the way? I was mostly working 6 days a week, or 5.5, which is effectively 6, So I'm working 6.5 to get 1.5. It's insanity, why? And a lot of it is based around what is the national religion in this country is consumerism. That's what people worship, is being able to buy things. And economically, I remember the 80s and the 90s when, maybe this changed by the late 90s, but, things were still expensive enough, just the way things worked economically, myself and I feel like a lot of other people couldn't just go out and buy shit all the time. And we still spent, like, so part of wanting to get married, part of always having a wife or girlfriend, on some level that is, well, now my wife, it's expected that my wife or girlfriend is going to have her own job. Now we're in a situation of, now we can sort of increase our ability to engage in the consumerism by, sharing living expenses, and sort of pooling our resources, right? And then, now we can get a mortgage, so now our rent is effectively lower than it otherwise would be. Okay, now we can buy even more things. Oh, look, credit cards. Now we can buy even more things. And then I feel like now we've reached a time where if the person is able to come up with any halfway decent income, we can complain about, the inflation. Yeah, that's true, but has that even really affected consumer goods as far as like, I shouldn't even say consumer goods, like electronics are still dirt fucking cheap as far as I can tell. And isn't that mostly what people are purchasing in a lot of ways? And a lot of it, just all this cheap Chinese junk, it's still cheap Chinese junk, isn't it? My father had a high income relative to where we lived, and like, he still didn't just go out and buy a VCR. We used to rent a VCR so that we could watch movies at home. And my dad could conceivably afford to just go buy a VCR, but they were so expensive. It was actually like, it's in today's money, it was like $1,500 to $2,000 for a VCR. That's what I'm talking about. Now you can just watch a movie on your phone. It's effectively free to just watch them. It's just the price of the movie now, and that's if you don't just choose to pirate the movie. Things have changed a lot since when I was younger. But meanwhile, I don't romanticize the past because I don't want to go back to that. It sucked not being able to buy stuff. It really did. That was no fun. Part of the reason why I don't use Apple products is that back when I was a computer nerd for my hobby, Apple was too expensive. I could build, and part of learning to build my own computers was, well, if you're going to be a computer nerd and you want to have more than one computer, or if I wanted to have, let me see if I can adjust my vernacular. If I wanted to have more than one computer, well, part of that was just buying the parts myself, and then pirating the operating system, going as cheaply as possible. And Apple was very expensive, compared to a PC. So I never fucked with Apple. Although I did work in the computer lab in college, and I had to learn just enough to be able to help people with the Apples. Those old antiquated machines. Yeah, man, it's not looking good for old Benton on this job. I haven't even got the paycheck yet. So once I get a few paychecks under my belt, I don't know, the urge to quit's gonna grow. And this whole car situation, man, it's really I realize that it's gonna resolve itself, but it's just hilarious, man. How did I even get in this? I mean, I know how, but it's the idea that I'm even in this situation with my car. And I also understand, as I say this, I have an audience of people, as small as it may be, because of the hour, and maybe because of how annoyed I am at the traffic. But so I will take some of that blame also. But the people's minds will just go into problem solving. To solve Benton's car problem. It's like, well, wait a minute, I'm also really good at problem solving. So I don't know that I need any assistance in the problem solving. And unlike most people, I will just actually ask if I need help. I'll be like, hey, I'm not sure what to do. Such as that one time I had to get that bill of sale for my car, and we had that language barrier, and I'd screwed up. Part of that, though, was I really was trying to avoid paying the sales tax. So there was my own greed involved in a way. I did create a problem for myself with the bill of sale, because I could just tell I am good at reading people, and I could tell, okay, even if I do a bill of sale, this guy's not gonna, he's not gonna let me talk him into, lying about the sales price on the bill of sale. He's not even he's only been in the country like 3 years. It's not worth it to him to potentially be able to get in trouble for this. So part of that was, well, I'll just figure it out later, which I did, by the way. Since I'm involved in corporate slavery, I just gave the slave system exactly what it asked for. So I'll tell you what I did, and I don't know if this represents forgery. I guess it represents forgery, but I went by the parameters that the people gave me at the motor vehicles. I ended up taking a picture because this guy thinks it's like, how a famous person has a signature, like an autograph. Like, I guess this guy thinks he's famous because he did like a whole autograph that, people are like, oh, just copy his signature. It's like, no, impossible. This guy thinks he has a fucking signature. And I even took a picture of it and showed it to Big L, and he was like, oh yeah, no fucking way. Like, no, there's no version of copying this guy, because people are like, oh, the guy at the DMV is not a handwriting expert. It's like, yeah, he doesn't need to be. Like, dude, there's no version of me copying this. And I'm left-handed, by the way. So it would have been super obvious that I just copied it. So I ended up taking a picture of the signature and learning just enough Photoshop to then, maneuver the signature onto the PDF file that I downloaded from the website for the bill of sale, which, as far as I can tell, is actually what they told me to do, more or less. They said, all you need is his signature on this bill of sale. They said, you can even just fill out the rest of it as long as he signs it. I don't know. Did I just admit to a crime? I don't know if I did. Maybe, perhaps. Hard to say. But it's funny, show the system what it asked for, and nobody cares. So trying to go in there without a bill of sale, it's like, oh, no, 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 no. They came back with what they told me to come back with, and they barely even looked at it. Oh, okay. Funny how that works. People were trying to solve that problem. And then Kim before the storm, trying to take over the problem solving. I'm like, hey, man, you do realize that the only reason I even brought this up was because Big L is in the area. He's physically located in the area where the guy I bought the car from is, and could see potentially Big L could meet up with the guy and get the guy to sign. But the Kim slave is for some reason wants to take over the problem solving. And I got no room in my life for people who are aggressively are going to try to take over my affairs. And if anybody has pet peeves, I'll tell you one of my number one pet peeves is, like, I was at Walmart the other day checking out, and you got the lady there that she monitors the self-checkout. Well, it was like, I put a $100 bill in, and the machine gives me all my bills, but then it owes me like literally 3 cents in coins, which I don't give a flying fuck about. Meanwhile, I don't know enough about the machine to know or care that it's not going to give me the 3 cents. Okay. So the lady, instead of verbally communicating with me, she just physically steps into my space and just takes over what I'm doing, right? Which I just absolutely hate. And by the end of it, she's just taken over the entire, like, if you call it a kiosk. And now, because then I'm like, well, I don't even care about the 3 cents. And now I'm done, except she said, okay, well, she's decided she needs to switch the machine from cash to cards only. So she's like swiping her card and punching buttons on the screen, just like totally oblivious to the fact that I'm a human being. She's in my way, and now I'm just powerless, and I have to just stand there until she's done because I can't physically get to my groceries now because she's in between my cart and my groceries. So now I'm not even free to go while she's like, but meanwhile, gets paid by the hour. If she just stands there for 15 seconds while I get out of her way, like, her day is impacted not at all, right? And I see that in the Kim slave is like his need to take over the interaction. Why does that outweigh the fact that, number one, it's my deal. Number two, it has nothing to do with him, right? Like, on some level, it's my transaction. It really has nothing to do with the lady. Now, it's debatable that she's doing me a favor, because if the machine did not have enough bills, she might have been able to help me, because otherwise I might have had to try to flag somebody down, and then now they're going to have to contact, because I've had this happen. Now they have to contact the cash office, right? Like, now I'm waiting 20 minutes. So, yeah, she might have been actually solving a problem, right? But this idea where we're just going to take over the interaction, like, I don't do that to people, man. I think that's rude. Like, I think the number one thing is, if I worked there, I'd say, hey, sir, I can see that there's a problem with the machine. And I would wait to see how the person reacted to that. And as soon as I realize, oh, it's not going to give you 3 cents, because a lot of people are, some people are going to want their 3 cents, by the way. And then you get into the fact that that person has probably had a problem where maybe she assumed that the person didn't care about the 3 cents, and now somebody's berating her because they're like, you're trying to steal my money, because some people are that way, right? And now we're back to the Benton being an expert in human psychology. Like, I understand all these dynamics in the moment, right? But it's like, hey, I am a human being here. Can we just recognize that, can I at least be consulted with, or just other people are going to step in and solve my problem without consulting me? Like, so now I have nothing to do with the interaction. Or if I'm just like doing something in the real world, like I'm struggling with something physically, and then how many times has this happened to you where somebody else shows up and then they just physically try to take over whatever you're doing? Or they just, like, without communicating, they just try to like lay hands on your project, which actually can become dangerous if you think about it. So when that happens to me, I just back away, and now they're kind of looking at me like, what? I'm like, hey man, you just took the whole thing over, so yeah, you can have it. And now we get into, oh, I just thought you would do this. I just thought you would do, yeah, well, yeah, you thought that, but what does that have to do with me? Like, am I not worthy of being consulted on these matters? Or you're just going to, not you, the listener. See, now this is where I will break myself of this habit eventually. Why aren't they consulting me? And by the way, so I would say this to that person, use your words, person. Why can't that person open their mouth and communicate? Right? All of a sudden we're in a big fat hurry. Meanwhile, or just leave me the fuck alone and I'll figure it out. Or, hey, how about this? If I need help, I'll ask for it. That's my favorite part is I have no problem saying, hey, could you come over here and help me? If you don't, hey, would you mind helping me with this? If you don't mind. Pretty please with sugar on top. Could you give me a hand? And I think it goes back to, let's face it, the average person is suffering from a sick psychology. That's just the average person. So I understand why after this fake pandemic, some people are just like, yeah, man, I'll just stay in my house. Some people said, fuck it. They tapped out and said, we're just going to stay home as much as possible. We'll have everything delivered. And, great. I mean, on some level, who wants to wander out into this? So people can make fun of Paul for being on the metaverse all day and living in a trailer. God bless him. I mean, look at what he's avoiding a lot of fucking headaches as far as I'm concerned. More power to it. I mean, who would want to come out here and choose to deal with all this on a daily basis? But yeah. Hell, and as far as gambling, I might just get to 10 grand and tap out, and then that would actually be gambling. But see, 20 grand, the chances of me losing 20 grand are very low, very, very low. But the chances of losing 10,000 would certainly be possible. Yeah, man, I don't know what to tell you, dude. These people, now I've annoyed his fellow truck driver, but it's that Jeep's fault, sir. It's not my fault. It's that Jeep who doesn't know how to drive. Not me. So I guess we'll just go slow. As that poor truck driver chose to illegally occupy the far left lane because of how annoying the traffic has become. Meanwhile, there's not even really traffic. Just know we're all a bunch of bozo humans, myself included on some level. Not at all. Now I'm getting a text message wanting to know my ETA. That's a good question. Let me see. If I can avoid the 30-minute break, let's see. No, I got to take a break. Bear with me, folks. Text back the dispatcher here. If I can figure out. The two phones thing is not a great idea, by the way. Good morning. Do we really have to pretend like Benton doesn't have a thick Southern accent? What's up, Piano Man? Good to see you. Well, and I don't just drive 8 hours anyway. Like, I'm not one of these guys who, like, takes a piss while he's driving and all that. I'm going to stop and I'm going to eat. You know, I'm going to eat 2 meals between now and then. Or, well, I'll probably eat at least one more meal. Break time. Break time for who? Well, the government makes me take a 30-minute break, which is, I think, silly because I'm not going to need a 30-minute break. But whatever. Whatever. I stop enough along the way. I never just need a 30-minute break. Like this never happened one time in my truck driving where I'm like, thank God for this government mandated 30-minute break. That's not a thing. Now I did one time accidentally roll out at 29 minutes and then got back on the road and had to pull over on the shoulder and just sit there for 30 minutes. That was fun. But I almost always beat what the GPS says for drive time. See how it goes. And it was interesting if anybody remembers when Highly Suspect was on the broadcast talking about this American State National thing. And I was looking at that website that he posted. I can't remember what it was. My Status Select, I think. Was that it? And I'm sure I could figure out how to do it myself. I don't mind paying them money to prepare the documents, but their website said it takes several months because of the high demand or whatever. So I think I could probably figure out how to do the shit myself. But yeah, I've lost all interest in paying income tax. So I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be paying any more income tax. And, I just don't. And in the short term, I will owe tax for some of this because I am, I signed the. Although I did notice, like on the 1099 paperwork I filled out when they hired me, there is an option for like they can pay out a corporation, and in fact, the company was surprised that I didn't already have a S corp or whatever. And I was like, no, it's my first 1099. I just didn't know. I don't know how it works really. So there was an option for they'll pay out to a trust apparently on 1099. So, conceivably I could file all the whatever that American State National stuff is. You know, I guess I could just have my pay sent to a trust, right? The more I learn about it, I don't understand it well enough. My comprehension level's not high enough. And so, like, I think it will benefit, probably could benefit the, the so-called community, because I know, like, when Mitchell gets into this, the beneficiary and the this and the trustee and the this and the that, I think we need somebody that's as pedantic and as autistic as me, who can, if I understood it as well as Mitchell did, I would be able to, in the moment, I would be able to break it all down to where the uninitiated person who just generally understands some of the so-called SOBSIT stuff would be able to follow it. But when he gets all into this, the beneficiary and the this and the that, I just can't follow what he's saying. And I know if I can't follow it, a lot of other people can't follow it. Same thing with Wizard when he goes off on one of his jags. Like, intuitively, I understand that he's right. Like, I can realize that he's most likely correct, but I can't follow. He's like, well, the this and the that and the this and the that. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about, right? So I have no confidence in just being able to say, oh, well, yeah, you just do this and you do that, right? It's like, no, there's a lot of little steps. And if the person doesn't understand the little steps, and then somebody like Highly Suspect going, well, and you have to do everything correctly. And I think that's where people like Chalk Body Outline and his whole crew, that's where they get very suspect, because I think their thing is, well, you can't have a system where it's just, oh, as long as you dot every I and, cross every T, then you don't have to pay federal income tax. But if you accidentally make an error on some of the paperwork, now you go off to prison. Like, yeah, that doesn't make sense either. Like, that can't, I don't see how that could be reality. It has to be somewhere in the middle, as far as I'm concerned. But the fact is, I think where could be beneficial to the, where I could provide a unique perspective is, I'm the type of person, I'm able to track all the details in real time. So I'll give you an example. Hashtag things Benton can do. So if anybody remembers the old DirecTV days, people used to get their DirecTV cards programmed. So the DirecTV subscriptions was based on these programmable cards that had a programmable chip on the card, right? So what happened was, smart people who had some knowledge figured out, okay, since this is a programmable chip, then there's certain types of programmers that can program this chip. And then people who knew how to, hack the code on the chip, well, they could then flash the cards, and, they could have a business. Okay, well, bring me your DirecTV card, and I will give me $100 or whatever, and I'll program your card. But then what would happen is DirecTV would understand this was happening, so they would change their code, and they would do, I think they used to call it like a silver bullet or something. They'd have some kind of term when DirecTV could actually send out codes that would temporarily scramble the hacked, the chip that had been flashed, could be made temporarily unusable. But then if I had a guy with a programmer, I could then take it back to him and say, hey man, I gave you $100 and now my shit doesn't work. And he'd say, well, okay, yeah, DirecTV sent out an update, but I'll reprogram it for you this one time, but then in the future, you're going to have to give me X amount of dollars for my time here, whatever my programmer costs. So I had a buddy, and then at a certain point, DirecTV got smart, and so whenever, if you went to buy a new DirecTV receiver, it only came with an updated version of the cards that could not be programmed as easily, right? So there was a period of time when I first got DirecTV when hypothetically a person could still go to a bunch of different stores and try to find an old style receiver that came with an old style of card, or you could go on I could go on eBay and try to buy a card. Somebody would just sell a card, but they wanted a lot of money for them because they're programmable, right? Well, my buddy had an old style of card, and at a certain point, DirecTV figured out how to just completely make it to where you could the old cards just could not be reprogrammed, right? But then you know how hacking works. Well, somebody figured out, oh, we can still use, and I know this is a long, convoluted story, but I want to make a point here. So eventually somebody figured out, hey, we can do something called emulation. So if the person has the programmer, they can put the card in the programmer, they can attach the computer to the programmer, and then they can attach the DirecTV receiver to the computer some kind of way. So you can have a separate computer that runs emulation software. And what that computer does is it receives the codes from DirecTV in real time, and it spits back. It runs software that spits back whatever DirecTV is expecting to see, right, in real time. And I had almost no knowledge of this ahead of time, but because my buddy used to have free DirecTV, and because I like to do research, I did all the research, and I spent hours and hours and hours and hours learning how to do this process. And I went and bought a programmer, and since I knew how to build a cheap computer, and you don't need much of a computer, one does not, the requirement for a computer that will run the emulation software is very low. And I took all this shit to his house and set it all up and made it fucking work. So my ability to follow a very difficult multi-step process where if one thing goes wrong, the process will not work. My ability to do that is very, very high, right? And my ability to troubleshoot that process, if I get to the end of that process and it still doesn't work, my ability to go back and troubleshoot it all is very high. So even if this whole SOBSIT stuff is, yes, it quote works, but you have to do everything correctly or you're fucked. Okay, let me get out of that terminology. I have to do everything correctly or I'm fucked. Well, guess who just happens to have a very high capacity for that? This guy, meaning Vince. Meanwhile, once I learn that process, if I'm on a broadcast with Wizard or Mitchell, I can sort of translate their higher level of understanding. I'll be able to break it down for the people who don't have that level of comprehension. I'll be able to break it down for them, which will be a benefit to the audience and will be a benefit to the broadcast. So I'm looking forward to doing things like that, right? So part of me going off into this 1099 land, and part of me saying, okay, well, because on some level, I understand that I don't want to be engaged in corporate slavery, but I am willing to do it, right? And yeah, I would rather have my money than not have it, but I'm still willing, outside of learning that, if I did not trust my ability to learn those processes, I would just be like, fuck it, it's not worth the risk. But, when I see the documentation that I'm expected to file, the stuff I signed to get my job, there's a box I can check that says, send this money to a trust, right? Or send this money to a corporate entity. And it actually did say something about American National, by the way. Why wouldn't I file all of that? Because I don't have that. I'm not in that fear space. See, most of the general public is in that fear space. So if everybody had to go, if we created a game where, okay, now everybody has to go set up an emulation system to get free DirecTV. And at the end, we're going to know whether that person did it properly based on whether or not the DirecTV operates as far as as far as I get all the channels for free or I don't. And I successfully did that. And I've done a version of that many different times, right? And I trust my ability to do that. Now what's the basis for my fear? And I know my ability to go research and that I enjoy doing research. So I have a high capacity to learn all of these things. Like, even though I'm not as mentally sharp as I used to be, right? Why wouldn't I do all of that? Like, it doesn't even make sense that I wouldn't do that. Am I making sense? And meanwhile, I've shown an ability. I ran a cash register for 6 months. My drawer came out to the penny every single shift. That's not hyperbole. For $1 million, very few people. Well, and actually, that would make them more likely to make a mistake, right? The fact that would actually increase the stakes. But the reality is 99.5% of the general public could not do that. So, Benton says he's autistic. Well, isn't that evidence that I am? Like, why can I do that? Things Benton can do, and why can almost nobody else do that? I don't know. Maybe it's this thing we call autism. Perhaps that's what it is. Like, I'm not just inventing that I'm able to do these things. I really did these things. Yeah, tell your lies to your vision, exactly. Meanwhile, DirecTV is the ones that created a business model where they just send their signal to the entire country, and then, but I'm doing something wrong because they're beaming a signal at me, and I'm decoding the signal. Like, that, to me, that's insane. Like, how am I doing something wrong? They're the ones sending me the signal. Like, how can I be wrong for decoding the signal? I don't understand. Oh, but you're supposed to pay for the signal. Okay, well, sure, but says who? Like, they're bombarding me with the signal. I didn't ask to be bombarded with their signal. Like, why don't I have a choice in the matter? So, I mean, realistically, by the way, loss, injury, and harm. Who's harmed? I wasn't going to pay for DirecTV anyway. So, the hell does it matter? What's the difference? I moved into when me and number 2 bought our house, or were buying our house. We moved in. Somebody had gotten the cable. Somebody had hooked up the free cable TV somehow. Well, that shit worked for like a year and a half. Well, did I do something wrong because I plugged my TV into the wall and I had free cable for a year and a half? I don't know. I moved in and the shit was working. Like, what do you want from me? Am I obligated to call the cable TV company and be like, hey man, hook me up, even though I'm already hooked up? Is that my problem? Like, they're the ones with the business model, not me. I didn't do any of that. It's the same thing with this bill of sale. It's like, yeah, of course I want to avoid paying the sales tax. Meanwhile, dude, whoever bought the vehicle new paid the tax. Why would the state of Arkansas be entitled to more tax? Now, I understand the vehicle probably wasn't originally purchased in Arkansas, but like, why would the state of Arkansas, by the way, Arkansas has money left over every year. Why should I give Arkansas $300 to register a vehicle? Like, it doesn't even make sense. So yeah, you can say, oh, well, Benton went on the internet and potentially admitted to a crime. Yeah, maybe I did. But now, meanwhile, I'm saying that understanding that the likelihood of me ever getting in trouble for saying that is very, very low. Meanwhile, the reality is, anytime this system wants to fucking hem me up and incarcerate me, I feel like it will do that irrespective of what I've actually done. Like, I don't subscribe to this notion that I have to actually do something in order to be potentially thrown in a cage, right? Like, as we know, there's like, don't they say the average person commits like 4 felonies a day and doesn't even know it? And but they believe they're law abiding, so whatever, you know. Meanwhile, as far as I know, the system wants me to get a license plate, wants me to fucking, you know. So the fact that it is against the law to avoid the tax, and arguably I did that. Well, good luck proving it. I mean, I don't know. Meanwhile, Arkansas has money left over. Arkansas is not incentivized. The amount of money Arkansas would have to spend to try to get the $300, it would cost Arkansas more than $300 to try to get my $300 at this point. So it's actually, there's no incentive there, right? Which is why the system in place says you must give us these things, right? And the state law is I can't, I can't. If I attempt to evade the tax, that's a crime, right? Well, if I'm already unknowingly committing felonies, why would I care about that one? Meanwhile, I gave them what they asked for. Now it's like, yeah, okay. Well, he went on a broadcast and admitted to it. Okay, well, if that's what does me in, so be it. But I just don't see it happening. Right? I just don't see that happening. Possible, it's very unlikely. I just don't see it. There's no more Asperger's, by the way, Roy. Asperger's no longer exists. I don't know if you're aware of that. Oh yeah, you're right. No, it's not even out of fashion. They got rid of it. It's autism spectrum disorder. But again, like, here's where I start: is what is autism? Autism is a collection of behaviors that are all within the normal range for human beings, that are collected together, and we've given them a name. So it's abstract. It's not a concrete. It doesn't. So when Toilet Bowl Earth is like, yeah, there's no such thing as autism, he's right. There's not. We've invented it. But that doesn't mean there's not human beings. There's human beings who have that collection of behaviors to a lesser or greater extent. This idea that, oh, well, we're all a little autistic, it's like, okay, maybe so, but how come when the ambulance goes by, I'm the only one with his fingers in his ears? You know, that there has to be something to that also. You know, how come I'm one of the few people that can run a cash register for 6 straight months and it comes out to the penny? So much so that I've heard the assistant manager call the higher up manager at midnight saying, "Hey man, I can't get the numbers to come out correct because we've got 3 different cashiers." And the guy literally said, "Well, Jason's drawer is perfect no matter what, so use his drawer to figure out where one of the other 2 bozos made a mistake." So I can assure you that Benton's drawer is 100% correct. So go ahead and use that to figure out where the mistake is. Like, for real. So, and I was like, oh, okay, well, obviously this shit comes out to the penny every shift, which I suspected was probably the case. So part of that is, if we could call it autism, that, part of the reason I'm such a great driver is the same reason why I can be frustrated, because as I do my job, I'm constantly observing very poor decision making on the behalf of the other drivers that I don't think most people notice. They're just not aware of just all of the things that are happening that are just dumb. It's just less than ideal. Like, why are we doing these things? autistic triad of impaired communication, impaired reciprocal social interaction, and restricted repetitive and stereotype behaviors, patterns of behaviors or interests. Yeah, there you go. And that's Roy Duggan. And so, and I think here's another piece to the puzzle that people don't factor in, is that I've researched autism quite a bit because I have diagnosed myself with it. But the reality is, when I grew up in Arkansas, 0 people were diagnosed with autism. 0. So logically speaking, is it possible that autism is real? Number one. So if I'm willing to accept that, whatever that abstract concept represents, that is real on some level, is it possible that nobody where I grew up, when I grew up there, had that thing? I don't believe that to be possible. So if we're going to now say that, okay, nobody was diagnosed, but some people had it, is it possible then that Benton is one of the undiagnosed people? Yes, it's within the realm of possibility. So now it's like, okay, what evidence can I collect to support this possibility? I'm not going to try to rule it out. I'm going to try to support it. And if I can't find enough evidence to support it, then it rules itself out. And I think a lot of people have that backwards, where they look for the evidence that would rule it out. I don't think that's backwards as far as I'm concerned. That's the backwards of the way. Like, that's the opposite of what Sherlock Holmes would do, in my view. It's the opposite. So what we see with Benton is almost nobody is willing to believe that I may be autistic solely based on, not only do I make eye contact, I make a high level of eye contact. So therefore, I can't possibly be autistic because I make a high level of eye contact in people's minds. Well, my research indicates that people with autism, some of them never recover to any degree. Well, some of them recover to varying degrees. Some of them recover almost entirely. So if it's possible that I was born with this thing, it went undiagnosed, thank God, by the way. So therefore, I never had any sort of intervention from the system, right? And that, well, is it possible then that I've recovered to some degree, including almost all the way, although not entirely? Is that possible? Yeah, I would say that is possible. Then we also get into a father with with unlimited focus, energy, and attention for compelling the autistic child to look people in the eye, so that every single time my big scary father saw me not making eye contact, he put the fear of God into me metaphorically and implored me to always look, because part of being a man, I was socialized under these very masculine characteristics, right? Where in order to be accepted as a man, I had to exhibit, everybody where I came from had to exhibit certain very masculine traits, right? One of which was, to be a man, I have to be able to look a man in the eye. Well, part of it is I have to be able to give a proper firm handshake, like all of these very outdated notions, right? So my father, who grew up in that same culture, who was indoctrinated very forcefully into those same aspects, he cannot have a son who doesn't look a man in the eye. It's not an option. And so, and then my father having these Jack Talcott, probably classic narcissism, that's going to impact my father if his son is out here not giving limp-wristed handshakes, not looking a man in the eye, right? Looking down, having a more submissive posture, right? That's not an option. Meanwhile, my dad was gigantic and scary and aggressive and very much set up to be very much like a drill instructor when he was around. Thankfully he was a workaholic and wasn't around that much, thank God. But when he was around, he was there to just metaphorically sit on top of me, figuratively, and to just browbeat me into always looking everybody in the eye. Well, guess who has an ability to adopt a system such as running a cash register and to always do the behavior, right? So not only do I make eye contact, I make too much eye contact. So much so that I probably, in fact, I know because I've had people tell me that. And every once in a while I've had somebody just say basically like, man, you're staring at me. Like, what the fuck? Knock it the fuck off. Because it is interpreted as a fuck or fight on some level, right? To just stare somebody down. So I've actually, since I've understood this, I've had to train myself not to look people in the eye. Because I've come to understand it's draining for me to be constantly looking people in the eye. Meanwhile, my dad, like, if he's like sitting in a restaurant, every single person that comes in the door, he stares them down, right? And it's like, dude, why? What is this? Like, do we really need to? It's not 1860 anymore, Like, do we really need to continue to live this way? It just becomes weird after a while, right? Well, see, that's the thing, Gary Baxter. Those things used to be true. See, that stuff is no longer true. And meanwhile, guess who just happens to have a very fucking strong grip, right? Like, I'm not one of these people that can like go out here and crush your hand necessarily, but I'm a fucking strong ass grip, right? Especially for my size. Really strong grip. And it's just not a thing anymore, man. And I'd rather just not even shake hands. And now that's where we're at with the after the fake pandemic, and we did seem to be involved in excessive handshaking in the past amongst males. I think it's probably better overall that we're getting away from that. But the reality is, I was socialized in ways that really don't, in the real world in 2023, it's just really not that way anymore. Now, yeah, it is a benefit in ways. For me, I do have a benefit that I'm really good non-verbally. I'm really good when I need to give somebody a certain facial expression, when I need to make certain eye contact, right? Especially if, in business dealings, or if it's like on the job or whatever, like the operations manager at my companies, even though he's younger than me and all this, he's probably more of a type A, stereotypical alpha male. Well, yeah, it is to my benefit when I'm dealing with him that I can sort of just kind of meet him where he lives, right? Yes, to my advantage. But then you also get into like never outshine the master and all of these things too, right? The 48 laws of power, art of war type thing. Well, see, I don't do the super strong grip. See, Gary, that's where the handshake though, and I agree with what you're saying, Gary. Yeah, the person who tries to crush your hand, that's a thing where you do learn a lot about them, right? But then again, just because somebody crushes my hand doesn't mean that they do that to everybody, right? So, that can be a compliment to me that, oh, they see me in spite of my physical stature, they see me as somebody who's such a strong personality that they want to impress upon me that they're not somebody to be fucked with, or they just want to make an impression. That's great. But then it does sort of become a balance where, it's like, where does the hand get positioned, versus where's the squeeze, right? Versus my hand, I have really big hands for my size. So rarely am I shaking hands with somebody who has bigger hands than me. Sometimes I am. So even if the person is stronger than me, I may actually have my hand may very well be bigger than theirs, right? So then it's like, where am I catching them? Where are they catching me? Then, so am I strong enough to take the less dominant hand position and still keep them from dominating me, right? Versus the person who tries to crush, is that somebody who's seeking to always dominate? Versus also, when you see the person who will only ever offer the dominant hand position, meaning like, if the other person is offering the handshake, but they hold their hand to where their palm, like their knuckles are facing up, well, they're offering the most dominant position, meaning if I'm going to shake their hand, am I going to hold my hand, perpendicular to the ground and force them to rotate their hand, or am I willing to submissively show them my palm, right? But now we're almost into a give me five type of thing. See what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of dynamics that come into play. It's fascinating to me. Whereas the kids, your average 20-year-old, I don't think they have any concept of that. So you get into just kind of weekly offering, the limp fish, right? Which I hate the dead, the cold fish handshake. I'd rather just fist bump or something, right? Or even high five. Why are we even shaking at this point? Yeah, there you go, Gary. Yeah, tickle their palm. Yeah. My thing is like, just like, just I'm doing what I'm obligated to do. Take over a dominant time, let them know, well, I'm not a pushover. Thumb in his forefinger and hold it out to you, and he would say, if you can get this away from me, you can have all the money in my wallet, and nobody could get the wallet away from him. Like, there are people that fucking strong. And meanwhile, he doesn't even win. Like, it's not like if you can't get the wallet away, you have to give him something. And nobody could do it. It was just, and without cheating, or doing something to him, tickling him or something, right? It's just in a fair contest. Like, there are those people out there that just, if they were to put their hands on you, you can't break their grip, whether no matter what. Like, there are those people in the world. Part of the reason why I've strategically realized from an early age, there's really no point in physically fighting people unless I have to, because Like some of these motherfuckers are really good at it, and some of them really enjoy it. If I run into somebody who really likes to fight and who is really good at it, like this is not a good. This is bad for me, right? It's bad for me. Shit. Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Fucking hey, man. Yeah, the entire cell phone mount just gave up the ghost. These mounts are, man, they're nice, but they're like $30 a piece, and switching trucks a couple of different times, the adhesive is just not. They give you extra adhesive, but it's just not. It's not designed in the long run to be a thing that can work. So I'm gonna have to try. I was trying to wait until I had enough reward points, but I'm just gonna have to actually break off some of my own fiat and buy a cell phone mount. Yeah, cops use sidearms to get your wallet away from you. Indeed, that's a yeah. Well said. Well said. Well, and yesterday when I went live on my computer, if it hadn't been Tommy time, right? Uh, then I wanted to watch this video because I watch a lot of these body cam police videos, and I watch a lot of the DUI stuff, but I don't really like the actual, the field sobriety part. I'm not interested in that, but I do learn a lot about because I'm constantly observing human psychology and especially police. I like to observe their tactics, and I also like to observe a lot of this with this all the trans stuff and this gender bending. I got made fun of on the old CBO Discord because I said, yeah, I've read a lot of stuff about gender studies. And they were like, why would you read about gender studies? And it's like, well, that doesn't mean that I'm going to become trans. It's, dude, like, number one, it's like, I find it interesting on some level. Number two, like 5 years later or whatever, dude, it's a good thing that I have studied feminism. It's a good thing that I have studied some of this, the fact that males especially have been under chemical attack. And so there was a female cop who had been on the job about 2.5 years, was driving drunk, but looked like what I've said before is that because I do have a certain attraction. I don't want to go into it, but part of me refusing to repress, and I've talked about repression being harmful to the individual, and integrating the shadow, as I've admitted to myself, and I fully admitted to myself certain things that I'd rather really not know about myself, and that I've also detected in the so-called truth community. But I have certain proclivities. Well, part of that was I've always had a certain attraction to like boyish lesbians, right? But I never really understood. I knew it was like, I know that they'll get with a guy, right? Like I just know this as a human being. Like, women are attracted to men on some level, right? Even if something's happened to them and they've sworn off men. But I never intellectually, I just never figured out the approach to take with a boyish lesbian. But I always wanted to, that's now that I'm retired. That's one of my regrets. I never landed a boyish lesbian. But so this was somebody who had a certain type of haircut and certain type of facial features where I'm like, okay, this is like a boyish lesbian, right? This off-duty cop who's got caught driving drunk, who's caused an accident. And the way that this person is interacting with the cops, and I'm observing the aggression, now it's debatable. You can say, well, and I wanted to show this video and break down the video, but unfortunately the stream just never went that way. But and who's live, by the way? Am I just this boring, or do we need this much? Do we need this much of a video to where just my icon is not going to bring people in, or what? well, men like a challenge, and furthermore, uh, it is kind of it's hashtag the things Benton can do or whatever you want to call it, but it is kind of a ridiculous thing. But I was blessed slash cursed with high testosterone, and it runs in my family on my dad's side, and it has been measured. I do have I used to have very high testosterone, and even to this day, if I increase my calories to a certain level, it comes right back. But at the level of calories I'm consuming on a daily basis, I probably just have like average for my age testosterone. Well, okay, slightly high for my age testosterone. But yeah, I love competition, and I'm still very competitive. But as a young person, yeah, absolutely. But anyway, I don't want to digress just yet. So back to the cop, and then the psychology of somebody that's attracted to law enforcement in the first place versus somebody with not a lot of 2.5 years on the job. Some of these power trippers, they do sort of get weeded out. They don't make it to 5 years on the job. So even if a cop's has a certain, psychology of wanting to power trip, well, that's going to be limited by the time they make it to 20 years on the job. Well, the only way they made it to 20 years on the job is they have had to sort of limit. They can't just go out there and just run roughshod over the general public necessarily, right? It's just not a thing that can happen necessarily. Now, since I can't see the fucking GPS anymore, because I don't have because my mount finally bit the dust. I got to be careful that I don't miss my exit up ahead in 24 miles. Because I will just talk and talk and talk and just go right past the exit. I do have that ability. So let me bring myself back to reality here. Now I'm stuck in a situation. Now I'm in a situation. So I'm already like so I'm very astutely profiling based on her somewhat masculine facial features, but you could tell with long hair and a little less aggression, she would be a decently cute chick. You could tell, and got the certain type of butch lesbian looking haircut. And this is where I get a little annoyed with the people that want to try to talk shit about Benton, and potentially catching. It's like, no, I'm clearly butch, you guys. Like, this is like, if anybody knows anything, I talk about I've studied gender studies and all of these things. If you put me into that context, I'm clearly butch. Like, what are you even talking about? Like, what is this? So it's like, it's kind of hard to make fun of me based on, that I would be, in the submissive role. Like, no, that's not the thing here. So the reality is, number one, most of the females are on Adderall. Number one. So you've got stimulants, right? And she's drinking alcohol, which can act as a stimulant on some level. But for a female, I just don't think alcohol alone can account for this level of aggression that she's exhibiting. She's just being very aggressive in all her interactions. She's being very over the top aggressive. Well, what could make especially a female? Now, what could make a male that aggressive? A steroid. Well, what are steroids? It's effectively testosterone. So now I'm like, okay, hormone replacement therapy. So when we talk about trans and we talk about gender bending and we talk about all this LGBT, well, a lot of that now has become HRT, hormone replacement therapy. And the reality is a lot of these young gals are now on steroids, meaning they're on hormone replacement, meaning they're on testosterone. So if she's actually on Adderall, which can increase aggression, if she's actually on alcohol, which can increase aggression, which she's on testosterone, like what is this, right? Like this is just fucking crazy. It's clown world, man. It's sick, sad world, you know. And then by the time she's under arrest, by the way, and now she's just completely going off, yelling, you know, she's just going off, you know, giving this whole diatribe on camera in the back of the squad car. But now because of where the microphone is, it's no longer a body cam. Now it's actually the audio that's built into the squad car. Now I can get enough of her tone of voice. You can hear it in her tone of voice. She's on steroids. This is a female on steroids, you know. Which, by the way, when you talk about roid rage, here's the thing. So here's the ultimate point I'm trying to make about males and aggression. So I have years and years and years and years of experience in the realm as a being with a lot of aggression and a high level of testosterone. These females, now when I was 22, you know, I had my experience was from like the age of 14 to the age of 22. Well, if this female got on HRT 2 years ago, now she has 2 years of experience operating in the real world with this level of aggression, number one. Number two, wasn't socialized to be able to behave with males based on, you know, male chimpanzee, you know, male monkey fucking hierarchy, you know, Jordan Peterson hierarchies, you know, all of these aggression and these jockeying for position, right? She's not set up for this. So now you're going to have females out here, which meanwhile, yeah, the reality is, you know, most males, you know, a lot of males will just sort of yield to aggression. But what about when she runs into somebody like me? It's like, oh, I'm not going to let a male dominate me with aggression. It's damn sure not a female. Meanwhile, if she actually did have a dick and balls, if she really was naturally, you know, if she had testicles that were, you know, making whatever level of testosterone is now in her bloodstream, guess what? Even at the age of 47, my body makes a higher level of hormone than she's injecting. It's like, well, wait a minute, this is not a thing. Now she might be injecting a level of testosterone that puts her above the soy boy might only. So let's get into the testosterone levels. So like a soy boy might be making like 200 nanograms per deciliter, right? That would be low testosterone. So I'm going to assume I'm not in the proper lane, but I'm going to assume the bison. I did not see the weigh station ahead of time, but I'm going to assume the sign said bypass, so I'm just going to act like it gave me the bypass signal. It's one of the drawbacks of doing this broadcast. And the reality is, and this is why I say a woman, meaning a woman born with a vagina and ovaries, will never be the best poker player in the world or be the world chess champion, even though those are not physical pursuits, because a woman does not have the testosterone to rise to that level. And if they inject enough to have enough testosterone to match the testosterone levels of a male with high testosterone, the side effects are too harsh. No female, you know, what female is going to live their life, you know, with very, very hardcore side effects, right? I just don't see it happening, you know. And, you know, by the time, will literally have a deeper voice than mine, you know. as we just have to be tortured. You know, driving the truck, we just have to be tortured for some reason. Like, why can't I just go? And this, I hate the Southeast, man. I hate this part of the country. It's just so annoying for driving. Like, culturally, it's completely fine as far as, like, you know, it's not like the North. I would rather drive in the Northeast, but it's the people I'm not willing to be around because they've exposed themselves, you know, because of the fake pandemic. That's just how tyrannical and authoritarian they are. But, dude, the Southeast is just super fucking annoying, the way people drive out here. No, I don't agree with that. I disagree. Are you a female talking about being a gentleman? Because, see, gentleman is a false premise. And see, I did a podcast. I did a podcast years ago, back when I was studying dating and relationships. I actually had a podcast before that TV show called The Pickup Artist, and before Neil Strauss came out with his book called The Game. I was studying all of that material. See, this idea of a male being a gentleman, that's a false premise, because that's not a system we have. Because under when a man was a gentleman, that was a status, right? And in fact, not all males were gentlemen. Okay, so just being called a gentleman, you know, that's actually almost like a title, right? So a peasant, number one, was not considered a gentleman. Number two, would not have been expected to behave as a gentleman, meaning refined, you know, meaning, you know, interacting and putting on graces, you know, social graces. So see, what gentleman is, that's actually a control mechanism to control my behavior, right? To put me in a box where I can only ever behave in specific ways, but the female of the species gets to behave however that female wants, and nobody will ever say, well, that's not very ladylike, right? Now, the woman might get called a bitch, right? Oh, well, she's a bitch, which at a certain point took on meaning, well, the female will actually exhibit stereotypically masculine behavior, right? Well, now in 2023, do we even consider that a woman being a bitch, right? I would say not really, right? But when I was a child, it wasn't. Now, so when I was a young person and I was socialized to so-called be a gentleman, well, guess what? The girls were socialized to so-called be a lady, right? Well, at a certain point, that shit went out the window because of third wave feminism. Society adopted feminism at that level of, well, it's oppressive to expect women to be a lady in social situations, right? And so it's important to realize that when we invented these concepts of gentlemen and ladies, like, the lady could not publicly question the gentleman and still be considered a lady. But I'm in public, and the so-called lady can call my behavior into question, even at the level of, well, you're not being a gentleman. But it's like, well, wait a minute. Whether or not I'm being a gentleman, that has nothing to do with a lady, because a lady cannot correct my behavior and still remain a lady, because a lady is a status below a gentleman. It's a hierarchy. But you can't have a society, and I know I'm becoming strident and I'm becoming a little aggressive in my speech, but you cannot have a society based on gentlemen and ladies, and gentleman is a status where that's the highest ranking lady can never outrank the lowest ranking gentleman. The reality is the queen is still, maybe she's above a man in some way, but not really. See, the fact that she's a female still limits her status overall, right? So now we're in 2023 and we're trying to practice equality. So yeah, you can practice equality in some ways, but you cannot practice equality and still hold me to, well, now I must behave as a gentleman. No, that shit's dead. Now I'm an asshole and I'm audacious, meaning if I'm in the physical space and you say, well, you know, that you're not being a gentleman, I'll just say, well, that's dead, meaning that's not a thing. And I'll just explain to you why, well, yeah, you're right, but, you know, you're presupposing that I'm somehow obligated or indebted to a concept of gentlemanliness. Meanwhile, I don't get a benefit from behaving like a gentleman. In the olden days, one of the major benefits of being a gentleman was there were things called ladies, right? Now, none of y'all are ladies, but I'm still expected to be a gentleman. The fact that you're wearing a pair of pants, ladies, you're not a lady. See what I'm saying? Like, I can't live in this world where it's a combination of old timey, you know, Benton take his coat off and cover up the puddle for the lady, right? I might be willing to do that if I'm actually afforded the benefits of being a so-called gentleman, right? I might be willing to do that, m'lady. Why would I do that if I don't get any of the benefits? And meanwhile, a woman it's just, we just all take for granted, well, of course, a woman can do anything a man can do. And meanwhile, when we talk about that Benton ran off the ladies recently, well, half of that was me just having the audacity to say, well, look, it's either y'all are strong and empowered and powerful and dynamic, and you can do anything I can do, meaning I don't have to tiptoe. I don't have to treat you with kid gloves. I can just treat you like I would treat a man. Or you really are beneath me. You really are weaker than me. And I really do need to worry about your feelings on some level. But I'm not going to let you, it's not going to be situational. I'm either going to treat you just like I would treat a guy across the board, or I'm going to treat you deferentially across the board, meaning like on some level, it's like, well, I understand that you want to put your 2 cents in, lady, but like, why would we consult you? Like, grown folks are making decisions. You know, it's like, yeah, you weren't allowed to vote until 1920. So yeah, okay, Benton, be a gentleman. Sure, go back to not voting, ladies. So ladies, y'all all go have a lady meeting and say, you know what, after all, we've tried it out. We've tried out, you know, being legally able to own property. You know, we've tried out being legally allowed to vote. And we've decided we don't want that. We want to go back to the olden days of ladies and gentlemen. So we want to be able to hold Benton to some Gone with the Wind version of gentlemen. Yeah, that's fine, except you're going to have to go back to Scarlett was more or less a fucking outcast on some level because of having the audacity to behave in certain ways, right? Meanwhile, Rhett, as a man and having a greater status on some level, could, you know, he had more leeway in his behavior than Scarlett did. See, there in the in whatever that dynamic was between the two of them, he had an advantage because he had a dick and balls. Now, in certain ways, he had a disadvantage because he was beholden to certain, you know, he would have to behave in certain ways, arguably. But overall, she was the one that was restricted, not him. But now the woman gets to do whatever the fuck she wants. But am I really going to play a game where the woman does what she wants and then I choose to allow myself to be restricted? Like, that would be insane. For me to agree to that would be me to engage in insanity. I will not engage in insanity. So you can say till you're blue in the face, that's not what a gentleman would do, and I'll say, when did I agree to play by the rules of that game? Because I'm only ever going to play by the rules of that game if the women agree to be ladies, meaning you're going to have to go get rid of all your pants and put a dress on, and you're going to have to quit your job because I can't be a gentleman, but I'm out here competing for fiat against ladies. Sorry, and you're not going to be able to have a say in how the men decide to structure society, because you don't rise to that status, ladies, because of what's between your legs. See, are you willing to live actual equality, ladies? Or do you have to be a sexist and try to dictate and limit Benton's behavior based on what's between his legs? You fucking sexist. See, I'm willing, and I am a little lefty in that way. I am willing to live in something approaching equality. I am willing to consider you my equal, but I'm not willing to do that. And now you get to limit my choices. So, okay, now in order to make up for whatever whatever damage sexism may have wrought to women on some level, now I have to have damage wrought to me? No, fuck you. Fuck you. I'm not playing that game. You can't make me play that game. And whatever face I lose, I'm fine with. That's okay. If people view me as an asshole or a dick, guess what? I am that. So it's going to come out anyway. Might as well figure it out now. Who cares? And meanwhile, guess who had women in his life from the age of 15? In fact, they started crawling all over me starting at the age of 12. I was so sheltered and I lacked, I was so what do they call that? Self-conscious. I was so up in my head and I was so sheltered. I didn't realize that these broads, I had a broad try to throw a piece of pussy at me when I was 12. Meanwhile, she was like 15. So I wasn't doing anything wrong. In fact, arguably, she was trying to do something wrong, debatably. But, yeah. So I think part of that is, actually, I kind of lost my point. But I recognize at a certain point, none of the attention I got from women had ever had anything to do with my manners or me being nice to them. Now, I didn't just go out and be an asshole to them, but I also was never overly nice and accommodating because that's not my personality. But I am like a considerate human being. I treated them like people with regard. But I never, ever, ever, my success with ladies, I never connected that to, I'm a nice person. I'm a gentleman with good manners. That never had anything to do with it, right? But a lot of guys don't understand and will allow other people to dominate them psychologically into you have to be a gentleman. No, I don't. I ain't got to do shit but live and die, motherfucker. Now, I might agree to behave as a gentleman, but only if I feel like the reward is high enough. The reality is, and this is why I say I did invent a portion of MGTOW. Now, what I mean by that is I did some of the original writings that formed the basis of whatever that is. Now, meanwhile, I don't subscribe to MGTOW. I think MGTOW as a whole is ridiculous. But in the olden days, a lot of that stuff came out of what people wrote on the internet. It wasn't YouTube videos of people talking. That wasn't a thing yet. It wasn't people doing podcasts. I was one of the very first people to do a podcast about these topics on the internet. One of the first. I might have had the first free podcast on the internet from a male perspective, that would have been construed as male chauvinist. I might have had the first free podcast. No bullshit. That's a real fucking thing. So I will claim that credit. And if anybody doesn't want to give that to me, that's their problem. It's not my problem. That's why Snafu got corrected by yours truly when he tried to imply that I was somehow new to broadcasting. It's like, well, yeah, I might be new to the YouTube space, but I ain't new to broadcasting because I had a popular podcast, and I had a popular podcast before that podcast. So before I ever interfaced with the so-called truth community, I had a popular podcast on a different topic. So the reality is you can't paint me as somebody new to YouTube. Yeah, you can. Meanwhile, I was on YouTube before hardly anybody was because I've been on the internet more or less every day going back to 1994. So fuck off, Snafu. Apologies, I'm having to pay strict attention to the road. One missed turn's enough for today. And that's where part of my autism really is beneficial. And it may not even be the autism; it may be just the INTJ. If one is willing to say that Myers-Briggs, MBTI, if one is willing to say there may be something to that, because it is a theory, it's a Myers-Briggs, theory. I forget what the actual acronym is, but it's a personality theory system. Well, a big part of how my brain works is pattern recognition. So I recognize a pattern where as soon as I see that word gentleman, that means something. That's a subtext. And actually, the autism is a bit of a hindrance. I had to teach myself to read these subtexts. It's like, why is the person even bringing up gentleman? Like, what's the point of even using that word, right? Because if we're under a system of gentlemen and ladies, then nobody has to even say the word as a correction or a warning, because I'm the one with the skin in the game. Meaning, if I go out here and I lose status because I behave in an ungentlemanly fashion, that the system is in place to correct. It corrects itself. The fact that the person even uses the term, to me, that almost proves that this is not a thing that exists anymore. But human beings are keeping it alive because we are still stuck in the old. We're still stuck in the old days psychologically in some ways, and to our great detriment, I would say. That shit is dead. You're not going to put me in a world where I'm expected to compete for jobs, status, fiat, and power amongst creatures, irrespective of the content of their genitals. But in certain situations, my behavior will be prescribed into a narrow box solely based on what's between my legs. Go fuck yourself. I'm not living with 1 foot in each of those worlds, the old world and the new world. Nope. I'll live all the way in the old world, or I'll live all the way in the new world. I will not live partially in the old world and partially in the new world. Anybody don't like it, not my fucking problem. Oh, but you can call me whatever name you want. Oh, he hates women. Well, actually, I'm a misanthrope. I dislike humanity. What's between their legs is not really ever going to be a good enough reason for me to dislike them. So sell that to somebody else. That's not going to carry the day, right? Meanwhile, I was one of the people calling for a ladies' night because I was on panels. Before we called them panels, I was on when we did them through Discord, CBO Discord voice cringe, and there'd be ladies on the panel, and the men, I'd be able to tell the ladies wanted to say something, and the men couldn't shut the fuck up. I was one of the early voices for, hey, could we pretty please with sugar on top shut the fuck up long enough to let these ladies talk? because I'm sure they have interesting things to add to the conversation, but maybe they don't want to be seen as unladylike and come in here and have to just dominate everything and beat these guys into submission and make a bunch of lube asses shut the fuck up, right? Because nowadays people increasingly can't shut the fuck up, cannot overcome themselves enough to shut the fuck up. Well, they might be, Mason Free. Maybe they are a bunch of simps. But here's what's great about being Benton. That don't have nothing to do with me. Whether men are or are not a bunch of simps, that has nothing to do with me whatsoever. I'm the guy in my college dorm who was hanging out with my buddies, none of whom were getting any action whatsoever, and an argument and a discussion about two particular girls and which one of them had the largest chest. One of them lived in our dorm, and I was cheating on her with the other girl who was in the conversation for who might have the largest chest, who happened to be my girlfriend from high school, and we both went to college together. And none of those guys, as far as I know, was getting any pussy. Meanwhile, there was two girls with little waists, big hips, and nice round D cup chests. And Benton was banging one of them, and Benton was trying to bang the other one. And the only reason the other one never gave me any was because I never would actually break up with my girlfriend and then make the other girl my girlfriend. So the fact that these other guys might have been simps, that don't have nothing to do with old Benton. So I don't know what to tell you. Now, did I do anything, or was I just born that way? Or when I was on Paul's panel and he played that video about the 6 male types, and I've said that I'm really not into the whole alpha, beta, delta thing, but well, which one are you, Benton? Well, when I was young, I was a stereotypical alpha. I mean, what's more alpha than that? Hanging out with your buddies in the dorm, and the guys start talking about which one of these two chicks has the bigger rack, and I'm the one. Those guys have no big titty girls in their lives, and I've seen both of those sets of tits. So I don't know what to tell you. And consensually, that's not my problem. That maybe they are a bunch of simps. Got nothing to do with me. Have fun, fellas. That's their problem. None of my concern. Now, obviously, it's not. I don't have it like that now. So yeah, now that I'm 47, and probably not an alpha anymore. Whatever that means, right? Like I don't really even agree with that because yeah, even if I was an alpha amongst my bozo buddies, well, if I go down to when I went down to the Hyper, the indoor intramural sports building, and they had full court pickup basketball games, and a literal 7-foot basketball player. I'm playing pickup games and against like D1 scholarship athletes. Now, am I the alpha? Like, because really there is no such thing as the alpha, right? So it's like, well, it's all situational, Kind of depends on who else is around, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, no, I am a road warrior for women's rights. Yeah, I do believe in equality. And see, I never believed that women were less than me because I grew up with badass women. Both my sisters are badasses. Both my sisters have very aggressive, dominant, strong personalities. My grandmother's a badass. My mom's a badass on some level, even though she did submit to my dad and, was a homemaker for the most part. And, in the Jehovah's Witness religion at the time, the women were made to be very submissive. And I think that's probably one of the reasons my dad was attracted to the religion on some level, there's something to all of this, arguably. Bear with me, folks. We're negotiating the traffic. It's super annoying because so many of these trucks can go whatever speed they want. So I'm one of the few trucks that I can only go a certain speed maximum. So like their average speed is lower than mine, but then they will temporarily, like, it's real difficult for me to pass them sometimes. So yeah, anyway, never mind. We finally made it around. See, I never believed that anybody, a woman should be just, because she's born a lady, she's limited in what she can do in life. I just never thought that was right. I think I came out of the box that way. I've always been that way. It never made sense to me that, I had the blessing to grow up with some awesome ladies and, in my family, and why would they be limited? And meanwhile, my grandmother was a single mom who was a successful small business person. Like, this is very rare where I came from. There's very few women that accomplish those things in spite of the obstacles. In spite of those obstacles. Oh, there's lots of awesome ladies, and I'm not saying there's not a such thing as a lady. I'm saying there's no such thing as a lady in contrast to me as a gentleman. Because the way we use lady nowadays, I don't believe that it implies specific behavior. See, I'm contrasting in a specific context. I'm not saying the word doesn't exist. I'm saying there's no such thing as gentleman in the way that we no longer hold women to behaving as a lady, meaning, well, that's not very ladylike, right? Because the reality is, when men were gentlemen and ladies were ladies, women were ladies, a lady could never correct a gentleman publicly. It was not permitted. Why? Because she could not do that and be considered a lady. That would have been viewed as unladylike. So I can't be a gentleman, and then a woman can tell me that I'm not being a gentleman. Because if I'm a gentleman, she's a lady. See what I'm saying? Therefore, there's no such thing as a gentleman in this context, because there's no such thing as a lady in that context. Now, if somebody wants to misconstrue that as me saying there's no such thing as a female, well, that's not what I'm saying. And if somebody doesn't have the uh, intelligence and the focus and the concentration to follow me, I'm returning to Central Time. Interesting. To follow me on that narrative, then this is probably not the channel for you, because I do a lot of that thing, whatever that is. I say later associated with the song would not be a so if I'm a peasant with a dick and balls who was born on a farm, I was not a gentleman. Because a gentleman is a status in society, and they are laid in. A woman, not a lady. Woman was not a gentleman. One of the rare no service areas. That was the advantage of having the Mint Mobile before. The two carriers, I was almost never be on no service. But now I'm Verizon and phone and hotspot. It's funny though about my my health issues. I'm right at mealtime. I'm becoming a little bit overdue. So my body's trained, to eat within a certain number of hours after the first meal. And dude, I got all kind of rumblings going on, like in my gallbladder, and my body's really, the bile's moving around. So hopefully I can, there'll be somewhere for me to stop up here at this rest area. I'm assuming I'm back. We got at least a couple of bars, so that's good. Yeah, Central Time roboting. Yeah. And then, this is, by the way, part of the reason why the younger males, I think, are just, I understand walking out of dealing with ladies, and then, especially with the, on the one hand, porn being successful, and then on the other hand, just with women, just, not really being socialized, especially raised by single moms and all this, or even, moms that dominate their husbands to where, it's some version of, okay, thank God somebody's leaving. I thought I was going to have to do a parallel park. Oh, no, that's even worse. Shit, never mind. Misjudged the size of the spot there. This sucks. I don't even know why they even make it. I see I wish I'd looked at this on the map before I even pulled in here. It's pointless. It's just not worth the amount of time that it would take to make all these maneuvers. It's not worth it. Now I'm going to try this other spot since I can at least attempt to get in there forwards. No, it's not worth. It's just not worth it. It's not worth spending 10 minutes wiggling the rig. Yet another reason why people aren't willing to do this job for a living. Need to stop to do something, nowhere to stop. So, well, just nowhere to stop. I disagree, Casey. Creates all of that. Could not disagree more. Society creates those things. And when it disappears, so you need the gentleman exists in relation to the lady. So I'm kind of agreeing with you, but where the disagreement is that you cannot blame this on individuals. When these structures disappear for society, you cannot, I cannot be beholden at an individual level to certain behaviors that are based on structures that no longer exist in society. Ultimately, I would say it doesn't even matter whose fault it is. What I'm concerned with is the shit don't exist anymore. And we can debate why it doesn't exist, but it doesn't exist. So I'm not willing to live in a world in which we pretend like it exists. And it's just not, it's unequal to try to expect me to adhere to something that a female, it's only ever viewed as she's being oppressed, even if she chooses to adhere to it. Because that is feminism, by the way. You cannot have feminism and these things we're talking about. They're mutually exclusive. So a society that adapts any of the tenets of feminism is wholly incompatible with what we're talking about at the level of ladies and men and women. Oh God, this sucks, man. Now I get to tear up my steer tires with a gigantic drop off. so that I can eat. Oh, while everything falls out of the cabinets of the sleeper, because the infrastructure is crumbling and the side of the road is just a series of gigantic potholes because the money's no longer being sent to upkeep the road. But I need to pay income tax to play the national debt. So already rich bankers can get up to 30% of the money I make. No, fuck you. I really rather would go to prison on some level. Like, there's something to that, right? Well, there's not just one thing though, in Gary. It's a confluence of factors. See, that's how the brain works. Identifies a problem. Oh, the destruction of society at the level of male-female roles or whatever. So the mind wants to say, well, we've identified a singular outcome. There has to be a singular cause. Oh, no. It's multi-layered, multifaceted. Many things have led to this. Now, I would say MTV certainly has a lot to do with it. But you can't have a single aspect of feminism. It's not possible to have a society that has even one aspect of third wave feminism, but also has these concepts of gentlemen and ladies from the olden days. It's impossible. And to say, well, that's the fault of the ladies or that's the fault of the men. Well, ultimately, if we're going to blame anybody, I would blame the males. Because it's more in the male's nature to be able to provide that level of order, right? I can't really blame the ladies because, whatever evil forces we want to say, have psychologically attacked ladies at those levels, and they do have less resistance. In some regard, it's up to the men to protect the ladies from themselves or the female. When we allow the half of the species that's more in line with the chaos, the chaotic energies, to run amok, this is the result. It's what we are all now experiencing. But I'll never live in this world where it's like, yes, and that's the fault of this lady, or that's the fault of this group of humans with these characteristics. Okay, maybe I will, but I'm going to blame the males more than I'm ever going to blame the females. Now we must take a break because I must eat this food because of my issues, my health woes. And it's hard for me to talk while I'm eating. Maybe I'll drop the link if anybody wants to come. Maybe Tommy will come chat with us for a while. And apologies, Casey. I never even read your entire comment, so I might have actually completely misrepresented what you said. So if I did that, my apologies. And I do want to point out, though, under the old school traditional gentlemen and ladies, you don't get a say if you are a lady, Casey. So whenever it's problem solving time, you're not consulted solely based on what's between your legs. Now you are consulted, but you're consulted in a covert way, in a passive, feminine way. But when the men folk come together to talk like men and grown folk, y'all don't get to put your 2 cents in. You get to put your 2 cents in from a submissive posture. You get to make hints and suggestions. See? And then the smart males will, of course, consult the ladies. Because, of course, they will. Because to not do that would be foolish. But you don't even get to chime in under the old system. Not in that format, anyway. So you wouldn't even be allowed on the live chat. And the reality is, part of why I will most likely never be in another relationship with a female, I'm not going to be with a woman who's on social media. Period. They say, "Oh well, Benton, you really think you get to tell you?" No, I'm not saying she gets to do whatever she wants. I'm saying my she can't be my woman and be on social media. So I understand inherently what that results in is Benton don't get to have a woman. And in fact, if I was determined to stick it out with number two, she never would have been allowed to make a Facebook account. Now you can say whatever you want. Meanwhile, yeah, she would have been allowed, but it would have been like, well, okay, but we're not going to be together in the long run. And then she, because I knew what I was doing, she would have valued our relationship enough. She just would have stayed the fuck off of Facebook, because Facebook has directly ruined a lot of relationships that otherwise probably would have made it, or would have had at least a chance. I don't think that's debatable. But yeah, so no way, because now I'm opening up my relationship to the peanut gallery being able to chime in, and women just y'all are not set up. Women are not set up to be able to take all those slings and arrows of putting out all these details about their relationship, and then to be able to live based on that, especially with somebody like me who's just going to be like, well, no, I'm not. I don't give a fuck what those people think. I'm not with. I would never be with those women. So why are we considering what they have to say? Like they're not a factor. Why did they get to chime in? I don't know. I'm confused. Makes no sense. Anyway, be right back. Casey, could not agree more. And in fact, again, this is why I can never engage in women bashing. I'm way harder on the men than I am the ladies. Casey says men are supposed to lead. Most men are weak minded and terrible leaders. Could not agree more. Absolutely. 100%, Casey. That is a very true statement. Hey, who else is live, by the way? Oh, it's interesting how it's funny, right when your comment came in, I was having very similar thoughts, Music Holds a Secret. That's interesting. Like, as I was saying, who else is live, you typed that. Well, Z doesn't have an audience yet. I mean, he does, but he was gone for so long. I mean, how long has he been back in the morning slot? That's why my opinion was I don't think it's going to matter, but if I was Z, I would have thought long and hard about taking that long of a break. No, nobody's going to go to OTW. Yesterday, Z was live and had 81 people, and OTW had 4 people. No, that's what's going to happen. No, I'm good, man. I'm not worried. Yeah, that's true. Sorry for the eating noises. Hmm. All right, back on the road. Man. All right, we're back. Yeah, I don't even think it really is a battle. I mean, I guess it is in some ways. I don't feel like I'm in the battle because I feel like I put a lot of effort into, you know, sort of managing and that's part of why I would always try to monitor who was going live, and I'd want if there's 50 people over here, I know that's not my audience. My audience is whoever sticks around after such and such goes live. But some of those is just they don't like that other person maybe. But OTW is the odd man out as far as I'm concerned. That's bad sign yesterday when I think I was live with however many, and then of course some of that was because it was the continuation of the DVT live, but they're with 81 people or whatever, and then OTW's got as many people on the panel as viewers. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Well, see, that's it's funny that we. What's up? What's up? It's funny that we call that a panel, but actually, what that ends up being is a podcast. and you got to do it. You don't do it as a live stream. See, like I'm talking about an actual, real deal podcast is not on a YouTube channel even. But when I say I had a podcast, it wasn't on YouTube. It was on my website. It was an MP3 file with an RSS feed. But nowadays, podcast has come out to mean many things. But yeah, it was the one-on-one thing. We did one. So basically, you just record a conversation, and what it ends up happening, or not you, but yeah, me and Yurt had a one-on-one through StreamYard, but it was not live streamed. The problem comes in when one of the two people, and it was not me in this case, wants to say things but not have it be part of the broadcast, which is I'm okay with. But the reality is, I don't have the. I'm not going to make the time to do the editing. Number one. Number two, I don't really have the bandwidth to necessarily be doing all that. So I would want to, if I was going to do that and publish it, I would want to publish it as an actual podcast in an audio only format. That's how I would want to do it, because I do like that format, right? Now nobody will let me change lanes. But then won't speed up and get out of the way. Like, thanks, people. Thanks. Forgot what I was talking about. Oh yeah, the podcast. So 2 different times he was like, he told me stuff that I think he wanted me to know, but he didn't want it in the broadcast. So now I'm in the position of having to edit the thing, which I don't want it. Meanwhile, he was free to record it. We're both on StreamYard. So he could have recorded on his side and done whatever with it. Yeah, I would love to do something like that, but I know how to either just not care. I'm not going to say things and then be like, hey, I need that edited out, right? Or I'll be like, or I would be like, yeah, okay, I'll be the one to do the editing. Like, I'm not, I lost interest in putting it out at that point. But yeah, it was an interesting conversation. Too bad you guys have to miss out on it. Yeah, we may do another one. I'd like to. Maybe not while I'm truck driving. Well, I leave all the streams up. Feel free to clip anything. The one time I'm going to get a strike or whatever. And now, am I a robot? I might be a robot. Let me know if y'all can hear me, because I'm clicking on mine. So I'm clicking the comment showing on the screen, which leads me to believe I'm disconnected. This is miserable without these cell phone mounts. Just phones being dropped all over the place. Picking up the GPS phone to make sure I haven't missed my exit. Dropping the phone I'm talking to you guys on. Now I got to try to switch back to the hotspot. I got lost signal earlier. I ended up on my phone instead of the Wi-Fi. All right, maybe I'm back. I don't know. Fighting tech woes. Now we got signal. That was the from losing the signal earlier. Then the phone doesn't get near as good of a signal as the hotspot. Meanwhile, the hotspot has an advantage because it's only 4G. Uh, for somebody who's on Verizon and travels, I would actually be better off with a 4G phone. I really would, because half of the problems are caused because now it's back on 4G. But yeah, that all of that was caused by the phone trying to switch from a 4G network to a 5G network, and it was on 5G for like 2 minutes, and then it went back to 4G. Now it's back on 5G. See, it's trying to go back and forth. But since I'm on the hotspot and the hotspot is 4G only, yeah, it's just crazy, man. It's like we have all this supposedly all this technology, but then you actually look at how the shit works, man. It does not work that well in a lot of cases. That's right. Yeah, I'm a fan of silence myself. Mobile, yeah, mobile dystopia. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was interesting to see yesterday. As far as OTW potentially being the odd man out. So if Z can be live and then OTW goes live, and if I've still got 15 to 20 people that are willing to listen to me, then I'm happy with that. But I got to be honest, if it went down to 4 and stayed there, I'd probably just end the live stream in person. Then it's like, what's even the point? I can talk by myself without. I don't have to have the interactive. I don't have to have the interactive effects. It's fun, I enjoy it. can just talk also. Hey, all right. Welcome back. I guess that's L4YLA, which spells Layla, but there's Chalk Body's Layla, so now we've got multiple Laylas, although I don't guess she's been around too much. Three's a crowd? Yeah, I don't know. Well, if I ever get back on my actual schedule, I would be done by now, most likely. Or we'd be paneling. The solo portion, actually me going 3.5 hours solo is somewhat unusual. That's on the longer end. Yeah, off the wagon. Yeah, no kidding. Well, and I don't usually, when I'm doing live streams, I don't usually like really look at the people on the panel very much. But at a certain point, I noticed it was that day that, Lou was on and we were talking about addiction. And, Lou had talked about in the past that he had a heroin problem. But then I wonder if he's on methadone maintenance or maybe even that Suboxone or whatever. He almost looked like he was nodding out at a certain point. I noticed it looked like he was kind of like squinting to look at the screen, but then if you looked at him, it looked like he was nodding off a little bit. I'm thinking like, wait a minute, which I don't even care, but yeah, what's up, Roy? I don't know. Trying to find a place to pull over long enough to eat. That's been really the only drama lately. And losing signal or not being on the right, Wi-Fi network. Hang on, I'm trying to check. I want to see who's live. OT is not live yet. And Z, I guess, for whatever reason, doesn't really show up, even though I'm subscribed to him, or I was. Maybe YouTube unsubscribed me. How many Z got, if y'all don't mind? I'm assuming around 100 or 80 to 100. Yeah, exactly. Problems of modernity. Yeah, Lou is quite the character. I agree. Very likable. Lou's very likable. Very annoying in certain ways, but I'm sure that applies to yours truly as well. Yeah, if anybody caught Paul and Yurt, kind of sort of talking about these things we're talking about now with the different live streams and, all of the content creators sometimes going live simultaneously and all of this. Yeah, there you go. Good kid. And Paul and then I had to I jump in, kind of late to the convo, but I wanted to be able to pipe up. And, then Paul finally, because I could tell Snafu, he gets under Paul's skin to some extent. As patient, as long-suffering as Paul can be, right? I don't think Paul quite gets the credit for his patience and his long-suffering in some regards. But, just more or less said that I was better at whatever this is than Snafu is, and Snafu getting, you can tell he got in his ego or whatever, got pretty defensive. Which is funny because I was thinking, if somebody said that about me and said, well, the way Paul said it, you know, somebody said that about me and Snafu and said that Snafu was the better broadcaster. I don't think that would bother me. I really don't. Like, well, I mean, number one, is it true? So let's just say that that was the case. Well, surely I would already realize that. It's like, well, he not realize that that's at least possible. I'm not even saying that I am, although, as far as going live and just, you know, using one's personality to some extent, I feel like I'm doing all right versus Snafu, but I don't really see it as a competition in that regard. He definitely got in his feelers about that, which I do think he kind of deserved, just based on, I did feel like he was taking a little bit of a dig at me and sort of trying to push me down and prop himself up, with the trying to insinuate that I'm more or less wet behind the ears, which is not really the case. Now we're on the hill climb. 45 with the flashers on up the hill. Music Calls a Secret, don't know nothing about that. Well, Snafu also very likable, I would say. See, he's a likable character. I'd say that's his saving grace in a lot of ways. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, and then, Snafu starts to he gets defensive, and he's, kind of trying to assert himself and starts talking about, that he's worked with Alex Jones or whatever. And Paul's just immediately like, we don't care, which is funny because, like, that's the kind of thing that I would avoid saying, but it's not because I'm, scared to say stuff like that. It's because I'm mean and nasty, man. Like, sometimes I hold my tongue, some of it's just based on I'm just mean and nasty, man. I got a pretty hardcore mean streak, and I just, in my more enlightened form, in my, I try to avoid being mean and nasty to people. I was a little mean and nasty to Tommy, but even that was fairly muted, I just prefer not to be that way with people, man, especially not with people I'm trying to have some sort of ongoing interactions with, I'd rather not. All right, Big L in the house. Where's he at? I don't see him. What's up, Big L? I'm with a new company. 1099. There he is. What's happening, partner? Good to see you, bro. Hey, listen to this, man. This is the hilarious, especially as a truck driver, you'll understand. So we know how these recruiters are, and it's not necessarily that I was lied to by the recruiter, but I've never heard of a trucking company where, because they offer to fly you in or drive you, fly you in or get you a bus ticket. But then in the older days, some of them would rent you a car potentially, or rent me a car. But, what we saw during the pandemic is there was a shortage of rental cars, and the rental cars got so expensive that these trucking companies more or less just stopped renting cars for the most part. And I'm not getting on a plane, and just the way things are now, I'm just not interested. And part of it is we're living in the truck. Now that I have a car, a big part of why I bought that car is I want to have a car at the terminal, and since I don't have a house and I don't take home time at a specific location, it's just natural for me to take home time at the company terminal. Well, they don't have anywhere for me to park my car, Big L. While avoiding just outright lying about this, the fucking recruiter, it's more like he hid the truth from me, right? Let me believe that I was going to have somewhere to park my car. So now my car is just like parked outside their office where it may or may not get towed. Yeah, great. Well, and even if it'll never get towed, it's unsecured, right? Which I'm not that worried about, but maybe not the best thing. But yeah, 65 cents a mile on a 1099, sir. Yeah. Well, thanks. What's up? Yeah, exactly. Every once in a while is good, just not too often. But yeah, always good to see Big L in the house. 43 with the flashers on up a hill. Where are we? I-24 West, and I guess we're in Georgia. I don't even know. Headed up to Louisville area. Coming from Jacksonville, Florida. LOL truck driving, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, car rentals. I don't know if it's back to normal, but I'm just assuming that even if cars are available, I'm assuming like the prices, as far as I understand, like more or less tripled. It was like, yeah, under the old system, these companies would get me a rental, but shit costs so much now, and I'm just not getting on a plane. I mean, I'm not going to say never, but I'm really not willing to. I'll put it this way: I'll get on the Greyhound before I'll get on the bus, depending on if you're talking about from Arkansas to Chicago. Yeah, I'll just ride the bus, which really doesn't take that much longer if you factor in like if you're having to drive yourself to the airport, or if you're having to Uber to the airport, and then getting there early, and then if the flight gets delayed, and all of that, all the ways that can go. Now we're speeding because we're trying to get up a hill. Great. 69 and a 55. Trump 2024 billboards, or whatever, the 2020. Oh, it's a Trump 2020 billboard. Okay. Even better. Well, we got a grade coming up, so I guess we better actually slow down to the speed limit here. Oh, 45 for trucks. How about you? Well, and when we had all the Chris Hansen crew in here yesterday, or whatever that was, with the people who were going after Tommy, and the one guy's like, "Oh, I'm going to do a stream about this." I'm like, "Yeah, please." I wish more people did that kind of thing. Yeah, you go live, fucking play my stream, pause it, respond. Just try to avoid, taking me out of context. Other than that, please do. I'm all for it. I wish there was more of that. Meanwhile, yeah, go out there and chase the predators. Give them hell. Shit. Just this. Number one, there's no kids here. Number two, as far as I know, nobody's involved in any of that sort of stuff. I'm willing to. But meanwhile, some people have a past, and I'd rather not know. And then meanwhile, like I said, pretty easy to figure out who old Benton is. Go feel free to pay the $25 and background check old Benton. Please do. Heavy truck traffic, and everybody wants to haul balls. I'd rather, which kind of interferes with me wanting to just, speed to where hopefully, I might not get a ticket. These guys are like way over 15 over. So I'm just going to go 50 and let them fucking deal with it. I don't need the aggravation. I mean, it's a 45. I'm not going 70 and a 45. You both go. Down a mountain. Got a pretty nice Volvo here, by the way. If Big L's still listening, 2019, 440,000 miles. But, it has way less. It actually idles, number one. Because, of course, the old-ass APU works great, except the AC portion of the APU does not work at all. Just like that 2022 Kenworth I was in with Vulcan. Same thing. APU worked, but the AC for the APU no working. But then that truck would not idle. This truck will. Oh, and by the way, guess who they trust with the fuel card? This company actually trusts me with a fuel card. Can you believe it? Can you believe it, Big L? Isn't that amazing? Fuel wherever I want. I ain't got to call nobody. It's truck, man. They maintain their equipment, and I'm not. Believe me, I don't do referrals. I don't. All trucking companies are bad. They're all bad. None of them are any good. But it's just some of them have things about them that are better than others. You can tell this thing's been well maintained. This truck drives great, and I do like Volvos. I like the way they drive. Me personally. Oh, and it's you stay hooked up to the same trailer for the most part. There's not really much drop and hook, which, yeah, it's nice to be able to drop and hook some of the time, but I do like mostly being, responsible for my own equipment at the level of a trailer. I do enjoy that aspect of it, I have to say. Although they say occasionally you end up swapping trailers, but if it's mostly trailers that another driver, has been, married to for some period of time, hopefully that they're less likely to just, let all the bullshit slide, right? And I haven't been sent to any bullshit shippers and receivers yet, but I'm sure that's just luck, right? I'm sure I will. They claim to run down to Laredo, Texas a lot, but I don't know. We'll see. They already tried to send me to New York, and I had to say no. Not even the city, but no, I'm not going there. Nice. Two of WhatsApp's friends help build Volvo's trucks in Virginia. Pretty cool. Yeah, that's insane. And I almost quit because when I started with them, they were like all the other companies, and did not require that. And so when they hired me, within like 2 or 3 weeks of hiring me, I think, or maybe a month, they made that switch. And I'm like, look, I mean, why the hell didn't y'all tell me when I'm in orientation? I don't even understand this. Number two is like, Yeah, I almost quit because I was like, this is crazy. Guys can trust me with, high value freight. You can trust me with the 200 plus $1,000 worth of equipment, but I can't be trusted, by the way, if they just tell me what parameters they want me to use to choose the fuel stops, I'll just do that. Like, I just never understood to have to call somebody to get the fuel card turned on thing. But, yeah, that's crazy. And then they try, when people push back, they try to say, oh, well, yeah, because, fuel prices have gotten so high, and they're trying to say, well, yeah, even the big companies do that. Or even Swift does that. And I'm like, look, I started with Snyder. Snyder, their tablet gives you, if you want the bonus, you have to do their recommended fuel stops. When I worked for Snyder, they let me get fuel at any Flying J or Pilot. They didn't restrict where I could. They never turned my fucking fuel card off. They just, if I wanted to be eligible for the bonus, I had to fuel where the computer told me to fuel based on the price, right? But if I didn't give a fuck about the bonus, I could just get fuel when and where I wanted, which is the way it should be, damn it. Oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know. Appreciate that. Yeah, y'all have a good day. Good to see you, L4. Yeah. Well, for the way we do long haul, it's actually not a problem. Uh, Generally, it's super fucking easy, especially now with the app. I've got the Pilot Flying J app. When I get to the truck stop and I want to get fuel, I just a couple of swipes, a couple of button presses on my phone, and then it spits out a 6-digit code. I get out of the truck, I punch that code into the pump, and it just away we go. And then it automatically puts the reward points onto my account for Pilot. They've actually made it very fucking easy overall, I'd have to say. Good to see you, Mr. Miyagi. Yeah, I'm probably about to wrap up here pretty soon, but I want to make sure I've got all my bases covered here. Well, Greyhound's fucking terrible too, but Casey was agreeing with me about the Greyhound. That just shows you how horrible flying is. And it actually used to be a privilege in this country that there are people who just like part of looking forward to their vacation might be that they get to take a flight potentially. Like it used to be, I feel like in the past it was kind of a desirable thing versus now it's so bad that as bad as the Greyhound is, I would really rather take a Greyhound in a lot of cases. Or just really neither one. I mean, I'd rather drive my own car, but ultimately, at this point, yeah, cash for fuel. Wow, damn, you are a fucking fossil, aren't you? Oh, yeah, exactly. The drive. That's the thing is, yeah, I feel like as much as I call it America scam nation, I feel like just your average person had way more potential to pull scams in the past, like what he's talking about with, the trucking companies had to give the drivers cash for fuel. So of course the drivers figured out ways, and I'm sure some drivers still do it. Like they figure out ways to, maybe even if it's just filling up the rig and then, selling some of the fuel right at the truck stop or whatever. But I'm sure it's still the potential exists, but I feel like that was even higher in the past. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think in the past was a little bit more of a free for all in a lot of ways than nowadays. It seems. Checking in with the GPS. Probably about to wrap up. Make sure we're still on track here. You know, we got somebody passing uphill who I don't believe is going to be able to pass. I think they're going to be able to pull this off. So I'm just going to get in the right lane and wait. Well, I got rained on like a motherfucker yesterday in Georgia, near the coast. Man, big time. It rained like the whole time. I kept having to get out of my truck at the shipper. Torrential downpour on me the whole time. Well, and then back in those days, I'm assuming the fuel prices were such that fuel economy probably was not a consideration really at all. Versus nowadays, more and more the companies are trying to, you know, at least somewhat attempting to, make inroads on fuel economy, and then the truck manufacturers as well. All right, I think that's it. I don't know if Z is still live. Zetetic Warrior channel. Check him out. OTW News is live apparently. Check him out if you're so inclined. I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but if one is so inclined. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye.